Right, this is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight. Obviously, in theory, we're into all the different splits around the world. So this is more of like, I would say this is more of like a everyday type episode. There's nothing too crazy in terms of news. Actually, a lot of the stuff, quite frankly, if people don't know, it's actually stuff that we didn't even address that much on this show, like stuff that bleed in. Like if you saw like the most recent Four Horsemen, we did one about all the Saudi Arabia stuff, etc. It's not literally definitely about league, but it is in a way because it's about like Team Liquid and what they're doing. And I also think, by the way, one thing I want to say about the Saudi topic, just briefly, since obviously we'll only mainly address it when like things happen and there's progression in the story, etc., is if people don't know, the reason why people like Richard have been able to predict all this would happen and sort of infer what will be next is because this isn't the first field it's happened in, guys. Like it's happened in, Monty always brings up the Live Golf one, obviously soccer in Europe, etc. Like there's so many examples of where these people have bought in other sectors that like you can sort of see the blueprint of what they're going to do. But there is some stuff that's like more related to actual like real league stuff. Like, by the way, I don't know if you saw this, Monty. I think I linked it in the group chat the other day. But I tell you one piece of info that's quite interesting that I do want to address on the like Saudi topic. And it's just this part, which is I don't actually really expect most talent in esports, Monty, to turn down this Saudi gigs. I actually think, by the way, this is why I always stress like you. I just care about the ones that, as a result, if they take the gig, are hypocrites if they were like, Carlos is not welcome, and it's like, but then they work with the Saudis, you know, and they're literally going, hello. They're like in fucking United Arab Emirates, like, hello, Prince Fives. Like, you know, you can't do that. That is obviously gross, isn't it? But if you're just normal talent, in my opinion, being talent's like being a pro player. If you don't give a fuck about all that and it's too much stress, or you just don't know about it, and you just want to play a ball, as it were, and shut up and drip, just do it. Go for it. Like if you're a pro, just click heads in CS, shoot spells in League. If you're a commentator, just commentate. Don't worry about anything. But I was actually quite surprised, Monty, when I saw this, that Dash, who obviously in League especially is fucking dying for work. He has nothing right now. And he's in that nightmare no man's land, purgatory, where look, I think he thinks he can get back into Riot, Monty, but it doesn't look from the reality like it's going to happen. So actually, you would expect this person would either go back all in again and take this gig, or they'd be gone. And he actually announced the other day on his video, it's on his YouTube channel, that he actually, not only did he turn down the Saudis, but he claims they kept coming to host the Esports World Cup, but he claims they kept coming back to him over and over again, almost like raising the price even. So, by the way, also interesting to tie into that Four Horsemen episode, if you think about, as we said, the first time, they'll always give you the bag, won't they? Because once they got you in the door, you must as well take the smaller bag next time, right?
Yeah, so I do know.
So fair play to him.
I do know 5 or 6 people from the league side who are going to this thing. And they actually, I don't know if you saw the talent announcement today, but they teased a talent announcement that had, Thorin, it had Atlas's name on it, which is one of the people I knew was going. And again, like, here's the thing, guys. Here's the way I look at it for the League of Legends stuff, which is that this is inevitable. I personally believe that it is only a matter of time until we start seeing either LEC Finals, because remember, they changed it to the LoL EMEA Championship, which includes Europe, Middle East, Africa, right? And then also, I think it is now on balance likely that we are going to see MSI in Riyadh next year. Because here, I tweeted this piece of language out that is, I think, pretty indicative of what is going to happen. But basically, nobody has really mentioned this, but inside the LoL Esports article where they make all the announcements about the Americas and about the Pacific League and about the split changes, there is a couple sentences in there that make it very likely that we're going to see this happening in Riyadh, which is, it says as follows: with a new international event, we'll also refine our regional split structure. Starting next season, all regions will begin with the new international tournament / first split. A second split will then qualify teams for MSI, which will move later in the calendar to roughly the beginning of July. So
the giveaway is why you've moved the space, you think, why you've created that space,
well,
right?
Obviously they need to make it into 3 splits, but MSI is moving from May to the beginning of July. Now, if you guys know, Riot goes on vacation for the first week of July every year, which is why Esports World Cup is where it is, and the teams are going there. So if it's at the beginning of July, it's indicative that perhaps not that many Riot employees will be at this event, because MSI takes, 3 weeks to run. So if it's at the beginning of July, presumably one of those weeks, Rioters are not going to be working. which means who is going to be running this event at the beginning of July, conveniently in the middle of when because remember, the Esports World Cup lasts like 2 months, guys. Conveniently in the middle of this time frame, and the Esports World Cup also starts at the beginning of July and will run for like 8 weeks with a variety of different tournaments.
You mean this video about all the invitations that they've sent out?
Yes.
And tell us. Oh, yes.
They said they're bringing in 500 talent. And you guys might remember Jason Kaplan from the old EU LCS days for PUBG Mobile. He's on there. Pengu, who is one of the most famous Rainbow Six casters, is on there. So they're spoiling some of this.
Player, I think.
And Atlas's name comes up. And again, I don't
care.
They
don't show you many. It's pretty quick in the video. You don't see all the names.
Yeah.
You just see Atlas as one of the pinned ones. Yeah.
But, I don't care if people go to this. And in fact, Thorin, I actually think people here's a crazy take for you. I think if you are a caster and you don't have current international opportunities, you absolutely should go to this. So let's pretend, Thorin, you're an LPL caster. Now, remember, no LPL casters were invited to MSI, the tournament that took place in China. Riot has gotten so insane with who they invite to these international events. And the question is, what do you have to do as an LPL caster to get to MSI or Worlds at this point in time? So they deny you international exposure, but the only way you can make your name to get more famous, to get these gigs, is through international exposure, right? Like, what are they going to do? Just keep casting the LPL and hope they get invites? That's clearly not working. So I would not begrudge any of the LPL casters, or remember, they only invite a couple of the LCK casters. Now, they typically invite Atlas, obviously, but, what about guys like Valdez or Wolf, you know what I mean, who don't get invited to these events? How else are they supposed to climb the ladder and get invitations to MSI or Worlds? How else are they supposed to be part of the international circuit? And also, guys, because like I said, this is continuing, and because it looks like MSI is likely to happen there next year, although I haven't heard that is definitely confirmed, I am inferring that from the announcement that they so subtly slid in there, that, everybody's going to have to work this event eventually, right? It just might be called MSI. MSI hosted by the Esports World Cup or some bullshit next year. You know what I mean? LCS.
Monty, that's also the interesting part I hadn't thought about, mate, is I was thinking about this as if it was like a Game as 8, like independent third-party tournament. But you're right. Even if they white labels it, like you say, and the Saudis just run it as part of the Esports World Cup. If it's called MSI, like officially, that already alone, in my opinion, will break most of the talent, because they don't want to like miss out on a massive part of the circuit. Think about it, if your people, I won't say the names, some of them work every event in League of Legends, Monty. They do all their domestic circuit and they do all the internationals. And then that, by the way, I could imagine even if you had principals, the FOMO, if you don't attend that event, is going to be fucking great. You're just going to stay at home in, let's say, Europe or North America, and just watch them all every day on the street. You won't be able to handle it. Like, I think that'll break. I actually think, Monty, believe it or not, you're onto something there. The official angle is what might break them, because they just want to be part of it. And I mean, let's be real. If it's officially MSI, it's also Riot approving it at that point in time. They're giving their seal of approval.
And not only that, Thorin, I'll do you one better. So what this 3-split system means for casters is fewer days casting, which means less money, because you get paid by the day rate.
Right.
And so are you really, when you have fewer domestic games in your local region, and so you're making less money, are you really going to skip a 3-week-long international tournament? That's 3 weeks of quite a bit of money that you wouldn't get otherwise. And I think the answer is probably no. And like, I don't blame these people, but this is the direction that everything is going, right? Like, how are you supposed to avoid this if you want to be a Dota caster? You can't. ESL owns the circuit, as we talked about on the Four Horsemen with Zyori. Like, they're already suppressing, through Richard's reporting, they're already suppressing Dota caster rates. By
the way, that's another thing people haven't thought about, who are talent as well. If you've taken a stand, you have to actually be the people, in my opinion, who are willing to completely leave esports talent work. Because as you're saying, Monty, let's say you take a stand in a game where there's not that many tournaments in Saudi Arabia. You might take the stand thinking, well, I'm just not going to work those ones. But what happens if your game dev decides I'm done doing the circuit, and they give the whole circuit to Saudi Arabia? Like
Overwatch,
or you're going to be shit out of luck then.
It could be Rainbow Six next or something like that, right?
Because by the way, I'll say this as well. The one I find gross is this, Monty. I'm just going to put this out there because it's not even an Overwatch show, so I'll just say it now. I'll tell you the hypocrisy I can't handle in Overwatch. that there's people,
Which
Monty,
one?
who even though Sinatra was never found guilty by the police and was never given any criminal punishment, as far as I know, it was one of those things where he was accused of sexual assault, if people don't know, by his girlfriend, and it was more just like a he said, she said thing, and there was like a recording of her talking or something, right? As far as I know, Monty, he was never given any sort of like official punishment. I believe it was just like, people think it's like an O.J. Simpson thing. It's like, he didn't get done, but we all know he did it. In Overwatch, the way they treated him for real was that, I mean, in Valorant as well, was that he had to like be like soft blacklisted out of the scene, and everyone who was a public figure treated him like he was a piece of shit and shouldn't be allowed in the scene, and it was like almost like a loophole that he was allowed back in. How are you going to say that and then turn around and go work with the Saudis? If you think like the potential someone sexually assault, well, then you couldn't go where people kill people. You know what I mean? Like, surely the grade is just obvious on that one, you know, like, but that is wild because people don't know all of Overwatch is basically Saudi now. That whole game is there.
Yeah, I mean, their entire circuit is just run by ESL at the current point in time. So, yeah, I mean, but I think it is inevitable that more and more of League of Legends goes in this direction. And like, especially if you are going to be talent, it's also just the earning potential of working Esports World Cup is huge. And it sounds to me like a lot of the LoL talent turned it down, including Dash, but a lot of other people as well.
Do you think that the Saudis actually, in general, like, isn't one of the problems Riot's always had, like trying to nickel and dime people? Do you think the Saudis will pay generally better than Riot when they do these events?
I mean, I know they do. I know
that's also a big factor too. Because another thing people don't know, Monty, is to this day, like I actually think the thing people don't get when you're describing how talent's evolved over the years is the thing you're saying about like the fact that you do your day rate, and if you don't work the day, you don't get paid. I don't think people realize, Monty, even if now there's like less restrictions on being talent, there's an enormous rotation though. Like if you actually counted, there's not as many people do every day of LEC as people think, you know, Monty. Like people in their brains think it's like, oh, you're on the LEC. It's like you might be on the LEC for like 20 days a year, mate. Like, I don't know how much money you actually make. Like, there's a lot of people, again, still not making mega bucks. So there's another reason why it's going to be hard to turn down. What if they offer you like 15K for this event, mate? It's like, how can you say no to that? If you, especially if you, like we say, you're one of these, like, either cast off onto the LPL or like, I do one day every 2 weeks of LEC. How can that guy say no for his career? It's hard, right? It's going to be pretty fucking tough.
I mean, I respect people like Dash who are saying no in spite of everything, but like, I want to make sure that I don't think that should be an expectation for most people, because look, you know, at a certain point you have to decide like, well, am I going to do this or am I just going to leave esports forever? You know what I mean? Or leave my game forever. And it's really hard to make those decisions. And, you know, I'm thankful, Thorin, that we've made decisions previously that haven't put ourselves in the tightest bind here. But if we're being realistic, Thorin, like if I wasn't so outspoken about this stuff, I probably would have gotten an invitation to this event. I probably would have been producing this event, if we're being honest. Like I probably would have been very heavily involved given my relationships with some of the people over at ESL and Face It, right? So, I have not been asked, but I have a feeling that I have like left money on the table here too.
I will disappoint you now though, Monty. Here's what will disappoint you. I'm only speculating. Obviously, I can't know this. Like, I'm doing like a fucking counterfactual here. It didn't happen, so I'm just imagining what would happen. But I'm actually pretty sure, Monty, I would bet good money that this is also what's mad. You know, people like me, you and Richard, in a way, can't actually take the money. And here's why, Monty. Because if we took the money, even people themselves who are scumbags and would sell out would pretend again to be virtuous to call us out. And I guarantee they would use this against us. I'm not even talking about now that we've already said it, you know, because then we'd be hypocrites. I mean, if we did just take it at the beginning, some people, before they'd ever had to make the choice, would have like pointed at us and be like, oh, look, and like, you can't win. Like, we can't win on that one. Because if you notice, we don't even really get to win by saying we're not taking the money. Then people are just sort of like, yeah, but something, you have a phone, I want, you know, like some shit like that. They can drive now. I can't believe that's still a thing. By the way, how is someone out there? This is where we actually have to level up our editing department. We need to get, what I want is this, Monty. I want editors that just make like parody content because it's so ripe. Like I was even thinking this, Monty, since everyone keeps saying that line, like they can drive now as a justification for doing Saudi Arabian esports. We just need to make a mockery of that drive to succeed, a mixture of Riot's drive thing, where it was like, you know, Matt and all those players, mixed with, what is it, drive to
survive?
Yeah, the fucking fantasy. You could make like a perfect combo of those, couldn't you? As a parody, though. That'd be straight fire.
But yeah, so that's where we're at with a lot of this stuff right now. Like, respect to Dash for turning this down. I don't think it's a good idea for Dash to turn this down. Like, to be clear, if Dash,
the first thing I thought when I saw that information was, one, haven't heard from Dash in a while, and then I thought, two, where am I going to see you next year? Like, I wasn't even aware you had this YouTube channel. Like, this is pretty rough out here. So that might be the last I ever hear of you in League of Legends, bro. If you don't take that gig, I'm sorry. It just might be, right?
Well,
does he do any games? Does he do any esports games?
The thing is, Thorin, is like, if Dash called me up and was like, "Hey, Monty, should I take this?" My answer would be yes. And the reason why my answer would be yes is like, you're done with Riot, buddy. So what, if you're a host, you could theoretically do all 2 months and bounce around from multiple games for the Esports World Cup. And you get your foot in the door for ESL and get, a working relationship with them. So even if the events that are not in Saudi Arabia, maybe you get invited to do, some CS events or some whatever events, right? So I would have said,
there's mad extra value to it
from a career perspective, you absolutely should take this. So I mean, in that, along those lines, I think it's even more respectable that he didn't, because I think he could have he's good at his job, and I think he probably could have parlayed this into multiple other opportunities. Let's put it that way. And, I would have said, like, look, the Saudi takeover is inevitable. Everyone's going to take this money eventually if they want to be on these broadcasts. So, right? I mean, it's grim, but this is, this is the inevitable tide that we are facing, guys. There is no winning in this scenario. The battle has been lost. The teams are complying. The developers are complying. It's over. They win. You know what I mean? So I don't think that turning this down actively has a lot of meaning, in my opinion. Like, I respect people who do it, but you win kudos. You don't actually win a career.
About Monty. This is an angle no one has thought about, because you know this from Overwatch. It was literally proven, right? One area that we never, ever bring up. It's really interesting, actually, Monty. Have you noticed no one ever brings up anything like, why doesn't Faker participate in Pride? Have you noticed no one ever says that? Why didn't Uzi I ever do it? No one's ever asked that question. So here's one thing you haven't realized yet, guys. If you're some of the people who are like very harshly morally judging the whole like Saudi shit, anyone involved, anyone who's sending money, understand that in the future, if you know how Koreans and Chinese people are, especially in business, it is almost certain names I just mentioned, like Faker, won't just go. They will not just be at these events. They will openly praise those countries. I'm telling you right now, because by the way, those countries. There's a certain episode of Crackdown got deleted because I said this. They don't give a fuck about gay shit. In fact, they are at best like mildly hostile to it. You know what I mean? Like, in fact, their shit is essentially what it used to be like in the West.
Hostile to gay people. Let's be honest.
Shit is more like what it used to be in the West like 40 years ago, Monty. It's sort of like, look, we're not going to literally put you in prison and kill you, but just don't do it in public and just keep it totally secret, and it's a shame. That's how they treat the over there. So if people don't know, like it would. I'm not even joking. The thought would never even enter like Faker's brain or Chovy's brain. Like, is this a moral? They just go into an event. They're not even going to see it as anything different from going anywhere. So they will absolutely be like bigging up the regime. That's just who they are. It's what esports is. So we're all looking at it from a Western perspective, but like this isn't even going to be a discussion at LCK and LPL. They're just going to the event, mate. It's not, I don't think there'll be anyone having big moral quandaries about this over there. Well, they just go to the event.
It's still, in Korea, it's still not acceptable to be publicly gay, basically. Like, obviously there are celebrities where, but you just don't talk about it.
Singers are, yeah, sure.
The open secret.
And you do get the odd person who's allowed to, again, by the way, good analogy again to like 40, 50 years ago in the West. You get the odd person where their TV personality is incredibly, let's say, like flaming Monty, You do have those people where like everyone knows like it's an open secret. But the point is you don't say it though. That's the thing, you never address it. So they're never going to, because if people don't know what I was referencing, why I said Monty would know this, is a detail I've always thought is insane. Because this is like 6 years ago, mate, was that everyone who's now judging everyone over Pride shit. Dude, surely Blizzard were the worst defenders of all time. Like, if you don't know, guys, they intentionally made all the Pride shit assets on the screen so that as a result, if you were like the Korean broadcast, like, essentially, like, what do you mean? We were always at war with you. There was no Pride celebration. That's the whole point. Like, their broadcast never had that at all, which, by the way, you can have your own opinion. It's sort of like a states' right angle, isn't it? Like, do we want it? Do we not? But I'll just say, like, they already were being cynical ages ago on that topic. Like, in Overwatch, because everyone knew, like, people who actually have, like, a real Korean or Chinese franchise, they don't want to be involved in that. That's just the reality of the world, guys.
Yeah,
I'm amazed that never actually blew up more. The joke is, if people don't know, it only blew up on your fucking wife, even though she had barely anything to do with it. She was like the only one who took all the arrows for that one.
My wife had the audacity to say that she thought that it should be the decision of the players to represent Pride rather than the orgs or the league. And
By
the
the way,
Overwatch community did not like that.
You should tell Susie this. I've actually always taken her perspective. And actually, I agree. I actually think she's nailed a very sort of a nuanced take on it. Because I said the same thing in Flashpoint, if you remember, Monty. I said in Flashpoint, I don't want the company to do, like, everyone has to, like, almost like you're forced to do it. Everyone has to flex. I said, logically, every single player and employee has their own personal accounts and social media. You can all do it privately as a private individual. Like, if literally every player could do it if you want. But the point is, you can't tell someone to do that. That's kind of fucked up in its own way, right? You must believe this and say it. Like, that's a bit sinister, no matter what it is, guys. Come on.
And like, obviously we've seen some of the, with LS, like we've seen the Korean clapback, because, you know, a lot of what was happening when it was suggested that he would become coach of T1 was the community getting, you know, very homophobic towards him, the Korean community. But that's what happened.
People don't know, even on the Korea. T1 Discord, they were going fucking balls deep on him. Pun not intended. They were going fucking ham on the T1 Discord. They were going really hard on him, mate. They were going fucking ham.
So it hasn't been easy, and like, so I do agree with you. I do agree with you overall, Thorin. Like, this is,
by the way, doesn't that feel surreal
issue
to even think back? Like, it didn't happen, so now we don't think about it. But like, there actually was a world for real, Monty, where like we were like 1% from fucking LS being the strategic coach of fake. Fuck's sake. Like, here's the thing, I can't lie. Even though it would have been a train wreck, it would have been a glorious.
It would have been great.
Think about like, even like, we even had fun with the Cloud9 one. This would have been that times 100, mate. Like, imagine the trucks coming when he does like one of those, like an Ivan pick or something. Like, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. He'd have like the permanent trucks coming. It'd be insane. It'd be insane, mate.
And then, of course, he would be confused by it and trying to earnestly engage with their opinions, which he absolutely should not do.
The guy who's actually going to literally be here's a prediction, guys. If anyone is going to be mentally broken and lose their sanity once the Americas is the new LCS region, it will be LS. Here's why. Because you've already seen he's doing that thing where he thinks he has to address everyone lying about him and calling him out. And he doesn't seem to realize that will never end. Like, there are an infinite amount of Brazilian people will just say that shit to you, Ellis, in bad fit. They don't even know you. And so if that really bothers you, you think, I've got to correct this. Like, you'll never get finished correcting it, mate. It'll never end. You actually, for real, just got to let it go, mate. You just got to you've got to be like stoic and just fucking let it flow on by.
There are, in fact, an infinite number of Vampettas that can be posted at you.
There
That can be tweeted at you.
People think I'm joking. Me and Richard will have had, I'm not joking, like 10,000 Vampetta pictures sent to us. Easily 10,000, by the way. Think of all the events we had in CS. Brazilians, it was loads. It was fucking loads. It's why you're actually right. The one thing I actually appreciate about the LCS one is, at least because they thought they were being funny, they put that like no LCS symbol over the dick. Like, well, that's better. Like, that's the one part I don't want to see in it. Look, seems like a lovely smiling guy, you know, hanging through that net or whatever. But it's having to see it. Believe it or not, it's having to see his penis thousands of times every day that I find objectionable when I didn't ask to do that. It's the way of Monty. That's how obnoxious that fan base is. But somehow they don't get called out on it because everyone's scared, right? Monty, they're essentially doing the online equivalent of like public indecent exposure, just forcibly doing it to you. That is insane. Just making you look at a dick thousands of times. Like, why is that acceptable? It's surely beyond the pale. No, you are. Come on.
It's funny.
It's so unreasonable. The saddest thing is this, Monty. They never did do it, but there was a stupid rumor, and I actually thought for banter it would be funny. The rumor was that someone was going to try and get the Vampetta guy to like come to IEM Rio or whatever, which is like, that would have been funny, to be fair, Monty, if he just turned up at the major like, hey, what up, like that. He's fucking on screen now. Is he even alive though? I'm gonna look this up. Is Vampetta
he's a pundit now. He's like a soccer pundit.
Sadly he's let himself go a lot, mate. Oh, fuck, he looks bad now. Oh, that's bad. He's really fat now. Oh, what's he done? See, I saw him in his glory days. I beheld him at his peak, you know, the zenith of Vampetta.
The other
if he knows how many times people in esports had to see his penis. Like, does this guy even know what effect he's had on the world? This is mental.
Dom said on Power Spike that he opened a Vampetta when he was looking at his phone at the gym in public.
What a world. What a fucking world.
So funny. All right. The other news.
Here's the thing, though, Monty.
All right.
When it comes, though, to curating your online experience, this feels like an appropriate moment for me to point out that when you go online without a VPN, like ExpressVPN, it's like walking your dog in public without a leash. Something, Striker BDS Adam. Sure, most of the time, you'll probably be fine. But what if one day your dog goes too far? Bench him. Don't bench him. This is a type of thing about a VPN. What if your dog goes too far and someone steals your dog? Well, here's the thing. It's kind of like that with your data, because if you have unsecured data and you're just out and about, it's easy to grab. Little kids nowadays can get apps that do this sort of thing. Obviously, there's value to it. Everything online's trying to take your data. That's why they ask you a million times on every website, can we have your data? Can we have the cookie? Can we have everyone wants to sell that data to everyone around the world, including all sorts of like dodgy-ass sources. ExpressVPN, though, gives you a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. Sort of like Rek'Sai, the app. I probably shouldn't have done that because so many people have vitriol against junglers. Maybe that'll be negative. I don't know. But anyway, I'm taking it as a positive. I like Rek'Sai. Always have Monty. Loved it back in season 5. Why is ExpressVPN so good? Monty used it to do all his shows from Korea. Bit of a self-indulgent reason.
I'm using it right now, in fact.
Yeah, there you go. I use it to access certain websites that I can't from the country I live in, because I live in the European Union, which is sort of like a modern day USSR. Again, if I had to pick out words, they'd probably say don't read in the copy. These are probably all there, but don't worry about it. We'll figure it out for next time. We'll get the feedback. It's super easy to use. It really is, by the way. Actually, of all the VPNs, this one really is. You just set the region. It's one, but it's like a massive power button. You just click it, it's on. You know, immediately. It's one of the easiest ones to use. Goes on and off really quickly. Also, some VPNs take forever to connect. It connects really quickly, and it has top ratings from reviews at CNET and The Verge, whoever they are. So old school sites for the tech stuff. I think I remember CNET from like 2001 or something. Secure your data, online data, today by visiting expressvpn.com/summoning. That's expressvpn.com/summoning. You can figure out how to spell summoning. It'll be in the VOD title. And you can get an extra 3 months free. That's expressvpn.com/summoning. There you go.
Yeah.
Shout out to ExpressVPN.
I've been using it to legally watch all the streaming services that I actually pay for, guys. Because turns out, you know, if I want to watch House of the Dragon so I can do the upcoming show on Nerd Legion Culture from Korea, I want to pay for it, guys. I want to pay for this content. Please let me pay for it. So ExpressVPN helps me do that. So it has been great, guys. I use it all the time, especially with the amount of public Wi-Fi I use in Korea on my phone. It's always on my phone now, basically. So it's been good using it right now over to Japan because, of course, obviously Twitch shut down the ability to save VODs on your Twitch channel if you're in Korea. So have to VPN to Japan so you guys can watch this VOD on Twitch later. So kind of necessary. So thank you to ExpressVPN for sure. Now, Thorin, let us talk about the latest announcement around the LCS. So we did have a very good opening week of LCS, which we will talk about. Like, I'm very encouraged by a lot of the decisions that are being made about LCS. Best of 3 is going very well, but we got the predicted announcement, which is that the finals are going to be in the YouTube Theater in Inglewood, which is in the southern part of Los Angeles. It's part of
I'll never be able to get past, Monty, the fact that as someone British, I shouldn't know anything about Inglewood, right? I only know it from that Dr. Dre line where it goes like, what hoods, Compton, Inglewood, and you're hosting the LCS there. Bro, he's naming off his favorite dangerous hoods, and we're hosting the LCS Finals.
Inglewood's a lot better. So it's part of the...
Has it been improved? Has it been gentrified?
Yes. Yeah. And also, it's part of the SoFi Stadium complex. So when they built the giant new stadium, the YouTube Theater is part of that. And so I haven't been there. It's apparently quite nice. It's very close to LAX, which makes it convenient for people who are flying into the event. It's about a 5,000 person capacity. It's super close to the airport. And, you know, people are However, frustrated, first off, by the size of this event. They want the stadium event, even though they haven't been selling out stadiums recently for LCS guys. I think it's probably smart to put it in a smaller venue. But people are, I think, understandably frustrated that...
Matt, this is blowing my mind. Are you implying, I actually got so lost there. I thought you meant people are mad because they want to buy tickets. There's not going to be enough. Wait a minute. Are you actually telling me, let me just get into esports mode again. Are you telling me some randoms on the internet who have never given any obligation that they'll give any money to this project are mad that even though they won't buy a ticket, Monty, when they look on their free stream, they just want to see a bigger stadium? Are you actually implying that's what people are mad about? Even though we don't even know if they'll sell out? Because you're right, by the way. The odds you'd sell out more than 5K is very low for LCS. Come on, mate. You're not going to sell out 10K, surely. So again, they have to give away tickets for free usually. What the fuck?
When they were in Raleigh, part of it was, I think it was Easter Sunday in the South, but it was maybe like 2/3 full from the people I've spoken to who were there.
And was it a similar size capacity?
No, that was like an actual like hockey arena.
They actually did sell more than 5K then. Maybe they did 10K or something. They did. Right. Okay,
yeah, something like that.
Fair play. Okay.
But this guarantees it being full. But people are upset that it's happening in Southern California where the LCS always is, and it's not going to be on the East Coast, for example, or in Canada or anywhere else. Okay. Which I do think makes sense because remember they got rid of the stadium.
You have to go and see.
It's literally the only chance because now they got rid of the event in the spring, so there is no spring road show. So it's really just this one, and to have it be 10 miles away from Riot HQ and the LCS studio is pretty lame. And people were excited about maybe it being on the East Coast. Also remember, guys, that as far as United States population goes, 2/3 of the American population is in the Eastern or Central time zones. Okay. So the West is still, the Mountain and Pacific time zones are still only about 1/3 of the country. So it's still, even though LA is the second biggest city, obviously you have big cities in Northern California, the Bay Area, but, it is less populated. And so a lot of people don't want to travel 5 hours from the Northeast to go to an event in Los Angeles. And so we don't have it in Boston or in the Midwest in Chicago or in Toronto again, or some, Vancouver or somewhere like that in Canada where Canadians might have better access to it. Right. So, this is an issue that people are frustrated with right now. And I think understandably so, because this also, Thorin, might be the last LCS final.
Oh, true. Yeah. Thing is, I would just use this cynically if I was Riot as like a marketing exercise. What I'd do is I'd go, we understand that a lot of people on the East Coast want to see League of Legends and are missing the fact we don't have it and the fact we're in such a small stadium. So you know what? You're on the East, we're on the West. Why don't we meet you in the middle? The Middle East. And then Mark Merrill gets out on a magic carpet. A whole new world. Life-changing money, 60 million. And he just and then you just go, just Nick, here's the thing. Technically, Monty, if every event's in Riyadh, it can't be unfair. That'll be, remember, by the way, I don't know if you've ever noticed this online, Monty, but there's a type of moron, and they're very, very, very prevalent, who thinks whenever you complain about some fucked up setting, like, if you say something, it's too cold in the studio, there's a moron that'll always go, yeah, but it's the same for both teams, so that makes it fair. I've never understood that thinking ever, mate. Because, like, by their logic, like, if you have one of those games, which they actually do, sadly, in the NFL, where it's like a frozen tundra of, like, fucking, like, like dog shit thing where everyone's slipping over and, like, you can't catch the ball. They're like, you're making out like that's like a good game. Like, no one wants to see that game. That's garbage, isn't it? So, yeah, I think it's nonsense, mate. But anyway. By the way, I do think it is sad, though, because I have always thought, actually, that's the area I've found most underwhelming about LCS the entire time I've watched it. Is, bro, I actually thought the one thing you should be able to rely on Americans for is having a big show. It's putting, like, the big finals on and the pyrotechnics and the jets fly over. Like the Super Bowl, I always thought the LCS, by the way, whether it's the 4th or 5th best region or not, I always thought you'd at least put, like, the fanfare out there. So I'm amazed that all these years they've had all these fucking studio finals or small. Like you say, mate, we're going to Raleigh, North Carolina for the North American Championship. What sport is this? Fucking pig wrestling or something? You can't. Like, you never have, like, the fucking Super Bowl there. What are you talking about? Like, that's actually mad, mate. Tallahassee for MSI. Like, there's been some ass locations in the US. Like, think about it. There's all those baller ass fucking stadiums. What about Cowboy Stadium? How about that?
They did do an event at the Houston Texans stadium and the football team, and they've done Madison Square Garden, both for Worlds and for LCS Finals. But that was,
That was
back
10 years
when,
ago now, man.
yeah,
Literally 10 years ago now.
it was a long time ago.
10 years ago. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. By the way, I'll never forget also, I actually do think, Monty, that like a LCS, the moment that it actually jumped the shark, when it bumped into the glass ceiling and it never broke through, was the moment that not only did CLG win the LCS, which at the time was momentous, they never won it, remember, but it's when they won and Darshan actually said, I think we're going to win Worlds. Like, I've never recovered, because then they got grouped, if people don't know. I've never recovered from how mental it was. Because you want to believe, you want people to say shit like that, but it just seemed so stupid. I remember even when he said it, thinking like, shit, I've just had like a harsh realization they can never win Worlds. Like, why is he even saying this? This is mental. I love it. I love it. Because MSG was the spot, of course.
Yeah, and look, I think, I've done esports events at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. I did the first Overwatch League final there. It's a great venue. There's lots of venues that you could pick right now. Apparently, it might also be true that they switched the dates to Friday, Saturday, because that's the opening weekend for the NFL. Also, which would be the Rams or the Chargers are using the SoFi Stadium on Sunday. Okay. So they can't even do it, the finals, which is normally on a Sunday, which is another little weird part of using this facility in Los Angeles. But it's just cheaper for Riot because they don't have to move anything very far. In fact, maybe they can still use their control room at Riot HQ instead of renting a broadcast truck.
You know what pisses me off, Monty? If people don't know, the reason why when we first launched Last Free Nation, we did that like live event around Worlds where Monty was there for the finals and all that jazz, and had Wolf and Papa Smithy and all the door, all those people with him, is because at the time, like initially when we started our company, we weren't doing it as a startup. We thought we were going to get funded, and so we were going to like spend some of our money on this essentially to like build out doing live events and make that like a service we could sell to people and stuff. But obviously the reason we haven't done anything since is we don't have the money now. Now we're in the esports winter too. We're all hibernating with all our fucking acorns just trying to survive. So the sad thing is people won't know this, but like we do want to do those events. Like I personally think it would be dope if every time you had a Worlds or something, we were just there for a week and we had like, because then the scenario would be just like this channel now. If you don't want to actually go to like the stadium and just sit with all the pleb fans and watch the show, you would come to our like thing at a bar nearby or something. We'd have like fucking trivia. I've always thought like that is so obviously missing, because if you notice, Monty, what people have missed out is this. That's the live equivalent of a core stream. It's actually like an under-tapped area of the market. Like, I've always thought that, by the way. I'm amazed that people don't pay like Tarek to just go to like the Valorant finals, just go to like the VCS finals and have a giant fucking watch party where like, some bar pays them like 100K or something mad. I think that's like an undervalued area there. I think you could really build that out. I think people want that experience.
You don't even have to go to the same place. In fact, it may be better go to an entirely different place. So, for example,
what would be does it in New York or something? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like, so if Worlds is in Europe, why not do one of those parties in New York City, right?
Yes,
for people who can't go. We've talked about that, and at least for us for LFN, like that is something that we're actively pitching to sponsors as well, and it will happen. Again, at some point. It was really fun when it happened the first time. We got a lot of live content there. We had like 600 people in this bar. We broke all the sales records for this bar. And it's, that's the bar where people go for like Golden State Warriors playoff games when they're away and stuff like that. So it's very successful. We'll get back there, guys. But we do want to do stuff like that where we actually host esports events and have people, LFN people fly in and create content and like do stuff there. So
if people know Counter-Strike, a bit like what they also do where HLTV does the live podcast, HLTV Confirmed, from events when they're attending anyway to like cover it. I think that's like mad valuable. I want to do that in the future. I think it'd be cool. It'd be cool to have this show live, mate. Wouldn't that be dope to have like a live episode of something inside?
Yeah, bleeding right into the World Final.
We're already doing all the bucket lists. We've already done. If you don't know, by the way, guys, this is also where you can never ever talk shit to me and Monty, because if you want to talk shit about this show, you're too late. Like you could have done it years ago, and we didn't make much ad rev, or we put loads of hours in, or maybe, like you're just giving opinions, guys. We actually did this show, paid by other people to do the show in the same studio they filmed the NFL Red Zone. Kiss my ass. I'm not even from fucking League of Legends. That's so fucking. That's a flex and a half, mate. We were in that studio. That's fire.
Shout out AT&T.
We even got
we welcome you back.
Because everyone's going to forget. I'm even going to refresh people. Don't you remember the mad wrestling kayfabe nonsense we did? Where we had like me and Loco, because I'd already previously done a real like walk off of that show. I did like a short thing where I told Loco like I'm never doing the show again. So it's cancelled for Worlds. And then we did that thing where like wrestling. Oh, music is not like, and then Loco was just on the show as well. And by the way, how glorious was that, guys? Think about the segments we created. Thanks, Loco. There was the thing where he said that Splice would lose to J-Team, even though he'd never seen J-Team play. That is one of the greatest analytical moments in history. And then I personally think his actual... I know you're the same, Monty. When we did the Chinatown parody
the film
skit,
noir, yeah.
Loco's dog shit acting is my favorite part of that. Even though our lines of fire was good, it's how bad he is actually perfect because he's like one of those bad actors from that era. Actually, you know that he really wouldn't. People like, what do you mean? I don't know about that. Like he was just so rubbish, wasn't he? He was so, but in like in charming way, and you know, like sort of endearing how bad he was at acting. He was so bad, wasn't he?
It was a good time.
So bad. And if people don't know, we really did write all those cold opens in like 30 minutes before. We never had any fucking planning. Like that's why I also like to do this shit live. Imagine all the live skits you could do. That'd be dope as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, be fun. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. I'm not worried about it. But yeah, so
what do you think about this final shit then? You think they should have had it in a bigger stadium and somewhere on the road?
Not necessarily a bigger stadium, but like a different location. I think putting it on the East Coast or in Texas or somewhere like that would probably be pretty welcome for the fans. And after not having spring, it just feels bad. You know what I mean?
It's my joke, Monty. I think they should have had it at some sort of Mexican border town with cartel ties, because then anyone who wanted to attend the event could attend. To be an enormous amount of fans. You know, make the event free to enter, obviously.
Jesus.
It's becoming the emergency. You can't mock that. It's the Americas. We talk about, mate. It's all one region now. It's all one region.
That's coming in the future.
You know what's sad? This is where I will always have that cacoethes element. If people don't know, one of the most surreal things ever on the internet was where, I can't even remember how this happened. I think someone on Twitter just linked it. Someone linked this picture that's like a Renaissance era portrait, and it looks exactly like me. You've seen this image years ago, right? And it just says on this image, cacoethes, which is a word that no one's ever heard of, which means like the irresistible desire to do something inadvisable. And the reason it's mental that it looks like me with like a devilish grin is because Richard Lewis always said that is just like my Twitter personality. It's just like the irresistible desire to do something inadvisable. So like I've always had that fucking, you know, just wanted to get that cheeky little line off. Always had that in me.
But you know,
because that's what I've realized, by the way. From now on, what I'm going to do, it's genius, is I've actually now got like a shield from which I can make edgy jokes. Because if they're about Saudi or about, well, no one can complain because you're all doing way worse stuff. If you actually work with the people who kill the people, my joke can never be that bad, can it? Like you've actually created, are you ready, guys? A safe space for me in esports. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate the safe space.
It turns out that words weren't the worst thing in the end that could happen to this industry. Now we're all sad. We're all sad that that's the case. That I would love to go back to where words were the worst thing you could do.
Here's the metaphor. Everyone on the internet was like a secretary. They were typing away all these angry messages, and everything was moving to the left like this. But then along came those Saudis with that big bag of money, and they moved it all. The Overton window just moved all the way back to the right. So welcome. We're here now. You're all fucked. You all did that. That ding was the sound of the Saudi money. Just ding. You were all typing. It was and then ding, and it's back. There you go.
Amazing.
There you go.
But I did think the LCS had a good start to this split. I really
best of three already succeeded. We only had to watch 1 week. It's all right. By the way, literally the first two series, like the Dignitas Cloud9 one was way better because it was 3 games. Like, bro, 1 week just proved the format already. Like, it's way better than watching a BO1, isn't it? By the way, Dignitas would have won the BO1 if that was the case. Like, it's way better to have a series, guys.
I will douse I'll put some cold water on this, which is like, yes, that's true, Thorin, but we also, you know, we got you're biased also because we got the rematch of the TL versus FlyQuest finals.
It was a mega match, I'm sure.
And we got Cloud9 versus Dignitas, you know, the Dignitas of the old Cloud9 members in the same day.
Or whatever they're called. Yeah, Cloud9 Yellow or whatever you call it.
Cloud9 Gold and Cloud9 Blue.
There you go.
But yeah, so we did get both those in the same day, which obviously we wanted to see more games of those matchups, so it felt really good. The test is going to be as it goes on, and whether some of the less compelling best of threes, Immortals versus Shopify had very low viewership compared to many of the other, like TL versus FlyQuest, which had the biggest viewership of the last week. So, I mean, I think it's definitely better. I also just like the way that they were promoting this season. I don't know if you saw the hype promo that they did for this one where they featured a bunch of the players. I thought it was really well done. It was fun. It featured player personalities. They tried to like amp up the trash talking, and the players actually seem kind of into it, which they're frequently not in these photo shoots or these like these content days. So I thought it had a lot of personality, and it ended up being a really good piece of content, and it did get me excited to go into this summer split. And we did get interesting games, not good games. They were very bad games, in fact. But it was fun. Like, that's the thing, is like LCS felt fun. It moved along at a reasonable clip again because they're doing a good job of limiting downtime in the broadcast. They are leaning into the player personalities. We got more of, APA talking shit to Quad in his first LCS series, and Quad did deserve it. He played not
good.
Great.
That was fire.
And it was fun. So, I think the games were less good than people implied. Like the NRG 100 Thieves series was incredible trash just from a gameplay perspective. NRG played terribly, but 100 Thieves didn't even play well. If we look at Cloud9 versus Dignitas, I don't know how you look at this and you're like, wow, Cloud9 sure looks like they're going to be better, when it still appears like they have all the flaws of shot calling and being over-aggressive.
That game was way too close, considering they're supposed to be the dominant team. That was way too close, mate.
Yeah. And they overextend, and they give their opponents lots of, they make a lot of unforced errors, and they give their opponents lots of opportunities. And Thanatos is super disconnected from the team. Not always his fault. Sometimes his team is just fighting when he doesn't even have TP up for some fucking reason. The gameplay wasn't great. Even Team Liquid versus FlyQuest. I hate these Smolder picks, Thorin. They are so dog shit. Like, why is NA picking Smolder?
They're just forcing it. I know. What's the point?
0 games in any other region on Smolder, and it's because it's the old NA classic of just wait until somebody throws. And it's disgusting that Team Liquid was able to win a game on it, and they won a game because FlyQuest lane swapped and just put a farming Ornn in the Smolder lane and didn't punish it at all. Is completely ridiculous. But even the punishment that should have happened from 100 Thieves wasn't there, because FBI was just getting away with murder, because 100 Thieves is so terrible at macro and so terrible at using teleport that the Smolder just gets to farm, I guess, and never gets punished. Like, Smolder would get dunked on in LCK or LPL.
Oh, get destroyed.
Yeah, dove 24/7. Like, it's a terrible champion right now. It is so bad, and yet here we see these teams playing it. So, I mean, I think that is super disappointing in its own right. I'm glad that Team Liquid didn't play any more Smolder in this series, but I mean, their Smolder at MSI was miserable as well. Like, haven't they learned their lesson on this one? I don't get it, man.
That story I've told in the past, Monty, because I just think, actually, like, if anyone made a documentary, this would be like a great angle to do. There's that story that we've often mentioned where in Counter-Strike, obviously it was always a European game, and then you had maybe some North American teams, but famously the Brazilian team Luminosity with Fallen and Cold Zero came along, moved to LA, and within a year they became the World Championship. They became the actual major winners, and they were better than the European teams. And famously, I asked one of them, including Fallen, on a podcast, sort of like, how did you do it? And they told me this really interesting story about how they essentially like made their practices against NA teams, because they had to live in LA, like shadow boxing European teams that they were going to play at the lands, not just beating and dunking on the NA team that they were playing in the scrim. As in, they literally told me if there were times where like they had like, missed and like they hadn't put a smoke in it, they wouldn't just go through it and win, because they knew on land someone would put the smoke there, if you know what I mean. Right. The reason I bring this up is because NA in LCS does the opposite, Monty. They actually cynically played down to the level of their opponents. Like, think about like 2 years ago when Danny was around, Monty, and they were locking in like Seraphine and Jinx when it wasn't even good, when like nobody in Asia played that at the time. Like, they would never ever pick those champions. And not only were these getting picked, Monty, like in this case with the Smolder, they were like running the region with those champions. And you're just like,
well, that was the joke, is that Seraphine is like the president of America.
Right, it was. No one, dude, the amount of times I saw people where it looked like they'd never played against the champ and the ult was just fucking them up. And you were like, these are pros, what the fuck? It was crazy how that champion was tearing up the game.
Seraphine scales extremely well, but she's so vulnerable in lane. And it's just like people weren't diving her, people weren't punishing her, people weren't like pathing bottom and killing her. And it's like the Smolder shit is just equally disgusting. It's like, well, we're just going to handshake farming Smolder for farming Ornn. I'm like, all right, guys, if that's the decision you want to make. I mean, technically they're farming Senna because the thing about Senna is that Senna has to be in a lane where she can actually, the way they changed her basically means that you need to actually be attacking enemy champions to farm souls at a reasonable rate. So if you are in a scenario where you're not actively, dealing damage to enemy champions in lane, you just don't get very many souls. So they wanted Masu to kind of like match the scaling, I also thought, I've obviously been extremely down on Busio because of his horrendous spring finals and MSI performance.
You give a reason. We have eyes, mate. It's obvious why you're down on him. It's not good, is he?
I will say his Ornn games in this series were very good. I thought he played really well. I think he really engaged well. He didn't have the same kind of nerves that we have seen previously. But I was suspicious because I was like, why are we putting Busio, the guy who has been choking, on the farming champion and playing Masu on Senna? Is this really, the strategy that we want to work with here? But I think he did well, particularly in game 2. So I just wanted to put that out there. Quad was really pretty underwhelming in this series. I think FlyQuest probably not going to address a lot of the issues that they had last split. I don't think this is going to be a championship team as the roster stands right now. Liquid just looks a lot better. And, Liquid continues to roll. The meta seems still very good for APA's champion pool. Yun did level up at MSI. And when he's not playing Smolder. And Core JJ managed to figure out how to play this game again sometime in spring playoffs, because he hadn't been playing well for about 2 years before that, but he did well at MSI also. So if these factors can be, can hold this team together and we get better individual performances and the kind of slow improvement by APA and Yun that we've seen, they just signed him for another 2 years, Thorin. They extended those contracts. Not sure I would have done that, but here they are to stay, I guess. Liquid's very confident.
That's called buying at the top, you fucking idiot. You just bought the shit coin at the top, and it's never going to be that high again, you idiot. Like, that is a bad signing, mate. And also, I'm with you on the Core JJ one. Do people not sit around and think about this, Monty? If Core JJ had been this good, that super team would have gone to Worlds and probably won the LCS, guys. Like, believe it or not, even though I do think people like Bjergsen also played fairly shitty, if I were those players or Whipple, I would be like, Core JJ, who the fuck are you, mate? I didn't sign to play with this guy. Like, where's the guy who was the wizard when there was like fucking Impact and Double Lift and Smithy? Like, that guy used to be sick. There's a reason he was the MVP of the league.
Yeah.
So I agree, he got way better this year. Like, I think he's like twice as good as he was like fucking 2 years ago, mate. He was kind of a bit sus for it. The problem is he just coasted off having an amazing rep, obviously, and everyone loves his personality, his work ethic, and all that jazz, right? So no one really flamed him. But he definitely had some off years where he was just an all right player, wasn't he?
It wasn't even this year, Thorne. It was just very recently this year, because he wasn't even very good for most of the regular season in spring, right? Liquid was not a team that was tipped to win the title. They got on fire during the playoffs, but they maintained that form. And like, again, we have to give credit to the Team Liquid coaching staff, who has been making this team definitely more than the sum of its part. I think Spawn has done an amazing job.
Monty, if the Yon guy's so cracked, why does he have to be on Smolder? Why not just play a relay DC? Crazy idea, I know, innit? Like, why not just carry the game with a hyper carry, you fuck?
He did that later. He did that later in the series on the Zeri, and he did show some decent Lucian play at MSI. But yes, look, this team is not going to be the highest individual skill team in this league. Like, they're just not going to be those guys. But they don't have to be, because as long as they play macro better, they can win NA. Right?
Monty, you have to understand, Team Liquid is just the fucking BDS of LCS, mate. Their job is to catch straws,
except they
punish
win
mistakes, to just play macro. Well, the difference is they don't have a G2 in their region, mate. So actually, I'll even give the same analogy. If they win the league, it's actually a bad sign for the league. You want this team because they don't have the superstars. You want them to be second or third. That's where you want them. If Cloud9's number one, and then like, I don't know, pick FlyQuest or something. If this team was third, now you're cooking. Now it's not a bad region, actually. Maybe you're actually decent, because that means to beat them, you'd have to clear the macro, wouldn't you? Like, if two teams could do that, we'd actually have a decent region, I think.
Yeah, and Cloud9 should be that team. Like Cloud9 should be the G2. This is what we were saying at the start of this year. This roster, well, I guess it's different now because they have Thanatos instead of Fudge. But theoretically,
even better now, yeah.
Theoretically, this Cloud9 roster should be the one that can make it to quarters at Worlds. Like they should be able to do that, given the legacy of these players, given the individual skill of these players, given the multiple MVPs, but they have no shot calling, and they still look bad, Thorin. Like even in that Dignitas series, they just let Dignitas clear vision for free. They are so afraid to pull the trigger and go in. They give up ground for free. They're indecisive, and the worst, it's like they're indecisive in one moment where they will not actually secure objectives or they will not fight for vision and they won't actually punish teams for walking in on them. And then the other time they're just diving 3 towers deep into your base and all dying and giving the enemy a pentakill. And it's like, what the fuck is this team? Like they're super decisive at exactly the wrong moments. And it's like, once they commit to a play, they can't actually reevaluate it and break it off, even if it looks like a bad idea as they're going in. And then the other side of it is like, when they need to be proactive, when they need to fight for vision, when they need to get control of a brush, they just give it up for free for no reason. Back off, play super passive. They really just have no idea of how to assert themselves on the map in a way where it isn't like 1, getting them killed, or 2, kind of choking out the opponent in the game once they have an advantage. And Thanatos obviously wasn't going to be the guy to bring this leadership. He's a rookie. And even if his English is good, which it is from what I understand, but he's still speaking in a second language. He's still getting used to these rosters. He's a fucking top laner. Like, is this guy going to be the magic solve to the Cloud9 horrible shot calling issues? No. The real question is, why can't Vulcan do this? Vulcan and Blabber. What is wrong with their comms where these guys cannot provide this service for Cloud9?
Especially, like, the one I don't get is this. You would think, like, they could just do it by committee, Monty. You'd think it'd be like Blabber just calls around his ganks or whatever, and then Vulcan, like, I don't know, sets up the map or something. You know, you'd think there'd be like a way to divide up the labor and not have to have one god shot caller.
Well, Vulcan also historically has been an engaged support player. So shouldn't he be calling the engaged? Guess not.
Yeah, I think so, right?
I mean, it's just very weird, the problems that they have. And you still like what you're seeing a lot of the time in lane from Jojo. Like Jojo's a very good laner. Oh. You see these advantages that they're able to accrue, but they just make poor decisions as a team when they're together. They still are struggling to kind of integrate Thanatos in, which is to be expected, but it's not where you want to be. Like, this team needs to make worlds. You know what I mean? Like, if they don't make worlds,
that's what a failure. That would be no MSI and no worlds, man. That would be insane. And no LCS titles. Like, that would be the worst year in the history of Cloud9 relative to what they've got. They should have had everything this year.
I mean, they won the Jojo Pyun lottery in the offseason. Like, this guy was the player that everybody wanted.
Yep.
And Cloud9 paid a lot of money to get him, right? They did splash out. It's not like Jojo's on a low amount of money. But they haven't actually figured out the team dynamics that are going to work for them. So,
and I'll just throw this out there. I also think one thing that people in the midst of all the drama of them not making it, blah blah blah, people have also not noticed this, Monty. It's the other way around to Core JJ. Mate, Berserker this year isn't the Berserker of the past years. You know what I mean? That guy really was like the best player in the whole LCS. Like, you could just give him all the resource, he'd carry the game against almost anyone. His window, at the moment at least, is closed a little bit, mate. He's not the same dominant force he was. So you look at the roster, you think it's insane on paper, but some of them aren't actually the same player. Like, yeah, if it was Berserker from like 2 years ago, of course, he was killing it, yeah.
I mean, I think you're feeling better with Berserker in like a Zeri meta. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that probably feels good. I mean, there are teams that we are going to see activate in this meta, like D plus Kia, who has aiming. We've already seen some good Zeri wins from him. Berserker's another player. Like, there are teams with carries that are going to thrive with these kind of champions. Ruler's probably another one, over there on JDG. So
of course, yeah.
The Mega Zeri players coming back is going to be helpful. The Kaisa players coming back is going to be helpful. These are champions that can really, really work out for these guys right now. So I am interested to see what happens with Cloud9, but I don't have a lot of faith after looking at that Dignitas game, which they should just put Dignitas away. Like, there's no way you come into this with people who haven't played in the last couple splits or longer, or, haven't even played their role like Sven. And Sven looked pretty good, to his credit.
Oh,
but
he did.
Like,
yeah.
Jensen also, he's kind of just a liability because, sure, he's stable in the mid and late game, but he also digs a hole for himself in lane that his team then has to get out of, which, like, why do we have to start that from that position every single game? You know what I mean? Like, why do we have to start with a mid lane disadvantage that's like, well, Jensen's really good at getting himself back in the game? It's like, why is that necessary? Why are we doing this? Why are we playing this way every game? And I kind of agree with the fact that FlyQuest got rid of him, because I think his upside is just kind of limited right now, and he really does ruin early game agency a lot of the time. And his champion pool is still not amazing. And people will point to, oh, well, he did have some good games. That's true. He did in this series, like the Wei game, he almost won it by himself, right? But he only got those kills because Cloud9 overdove in the bot lane and gave him a triple. So, I mean, I don't see this as something that really, has a lot of longevity. Like, Dignitas, maybe they're like contending for that third world seed, but with the way things are in this league, I think that would be rather surprising.
Thing is, though, I do think the underrated player in terms of potential is clearly Sven, because people act, dude.
He was so good.
I've never seen a player with a resume like his get treated like a bomb. Like, it's crazy, mate. He has won so many championships. It is bonkers at this point. Like, on both sides of the fucking Atlantic too. Like, he has an amazing resume, and people act like he was only good in 2015 or something. Man, it's so insane. Like, this guy, I said, look, he now plays with him, so take it with a grain of salt. But Licorice actually said, I think it was Licorice, said this is the most skilled player he ever played with, is Sven. As ADC. Like, he thought he was just that good.
I mean, Sven was always a good ADC, and I thought he wasn't a great support player, but he adjusted to it very quickly.
He knew what he was doing was the key thing. He knew he wasn't the shit, so he kind of like worked around it.
Yeah.
Support.
But it's like, as a player, he's very vocal. He's a good teammate. He's very hardworking. He's super dedicated. He motivates other people. He will shot call in games, right? And he serves as a leader on your team. Like, I think he really is one of the best teammates you could have, and he's individually skilled. And I think he showed that in this series. Like, his Varus mechanics for a guy who hadn't played AD carry in a long time looked pretty good. So I think, it was kind of amazing he couldn't find himself on a better roster, given how much I think he brings to any organization that he's a part of.
Oh, by the way, you have to love this, Monty. Also, Licorice just doesn't give a fuck about the global meta. He's brought back his old Poppy, because people don't know he used to play that way back in there. Thing is, though, that is one of those champions, Monty, I do think, just like Mickey X when he plays at support. I don't care how strong it is at that role. It's just about if you can hit that ult. If you can hit that ult, you can do so much with that. I still think that is actually one of the most like sleeper OP champions. Just because it's like the utility of it, it's not some damage metric. It's the utility of what you can do with it. It's such an amazing champion.
Well, it was also a good pick there. And we have seen Poppy in certain matchups, particularly in Jack's matchups in top lane recently. It's obviously been, especially with G2, like you say, more in the support position, and Vulcan did play it in the support position this series, or mostly in the jungle. But we have seen internationally the Poppy played in the top side, depending on matchups. And it is very annoying for Jax to play into Poppy. But the Poppy pick here actually has a lot of value, because you can actually just get on top of the back line, which he did frequently, and stop Jojopian's Corki from Valkyrieing out. You can prevent Blabber from dashing in on the Nidalee, right? You have a lot.
Being in Italy against that comp. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
It's not great.
That's
not great.
Interesting pick, certainly.
And so the Poppy actually ends up being really a very good pick into the composition that Cloud9 is working with. I mean, if you think about Cassante, Nidalee, Corki, Kai'Sa, Leona, there's a lot of abilities that Poppy W deals with there. You can also knock them out super easily, right? If they engage with the Leona goes flying out. So, look, it was a very good pick, I thought. And Licorice has, as you say, been historically very good on it. And it was a win for Dignitas, even though it was, again, kind of a throw in these, of course, joke NA Nidalee games, which are terrible, guys. Like, it is just,
by the way,
please
don't
stop.
ever pick that internationally. Don't even think about it, bro. Don't even think about it.
Because the thing
you
about
barely
it,
got away with it now.
Nidalee is really like Very dependent on team play, very dependent on lane priority for invades, very dependent on farming, which means your lanes, you kind of have to leave them in isolation, or you have a setup lane. You know, you have to have CC setup, right? That's why Renekton in Italy, like such a famous combination, because you can just Renekton W, setting up the spear while they're stunned. But there isn't actually a lot of CC on Cloud9's team, so the Nidalee spear setup really isn't there outside of Leona. And not only that, but you actually have to, your team has to play around the Nidalee poke, and you have to be able to find those angles and control vision. And you just have to, it requires a significant amounts of coordination, because she's not a jungler that could just walk in and face tank things and get vision for you, right? It's a more deliberate process of putting spears through brushes, poking people out, and poke compositions are difficult to play. They're the most difficult kind of composition to play, because if you make a positional error, you get punished and you all die and you give up Baron. They can be very powerful, no doubt, but they are hard. And you have to have good vision to prevent them from flanking you. And it is hard to prevent them from getting into your backline when they have Vi, Nautilus, and Poppy to sit on top of your backline and to get easy access. So wasn't really in love with that drafting. But I will say, Thorin, I think Reaper being back on Cloud9 is probably the thing I'm most excited about, not only because he's Korean and can kind of integrate Thanatos in that way, but because he just doesn't not, like, he always makes finals. Always. Every single one of his team.
I always said, like, even though at the time I used to critique him because he hadn't won the LCS, his like floor raising ability is very impressive as a coach, Monty. Like, he's the sort of person where if you give him like decent players, you're almost guaranteed top 4. It's almost like a guarantee.
Yeah.
So he obviously knows what he's doing.
Yes. So, and you know, he should be the one, if anybody can actually clean up their comms here and like get them to figure out their internal teamwork and macro, I would hope that it would be him who could do it. It's certainly a very good signing. So yeah, I'm maybe that is the factor that turns around Cloud9, but, we should also talk about the NRG versus 100 Thieves, because NRG is just a complete shell of what they were a year ago. Remember, this is the team that was beating G2 and going to the quarterfinals at Worlds, except with Ignar instead of Huhi, but that's not really that big of a change for them, I don't think. And winning LCS, and now they just look completely fucking awful. Like, they don't even look remotely like a contender. They look absolutely terrible. Right? Their drafts aren't good. Their individual play isn't good. The meta seems to be working against them. They're incredibly uncoordinated. They don't know when they should fight things. Like, why are they trying to fight early game with Smolder and then just like losing? Like, they actually got lucky to win some of those fights. And what was so insane about the first game versus 100 Thieves is that NRG was actually like getting Drakes and Grubs early with a Smolder, because 100 Thieves macro is so bad that they weren't even contesting for those objectives. And then NRG just kind of throws the entire game, even though they got super big edges through 100 Thieves inaction or terrible teleport play from Sniper. Wild that they could throw this. Like, all they had to do was sit back and scale, and they just kept engaging.
But that's weird, because I was told NRG had revolutionized Western League of Legends with coaching stuff and systems or whatever, and that by developing North American talent like Contracts and Parlofox, they'd actually shown the new way to do it, Monty. So logically, signing players like Thanatos, rookie error, isn't it? Like, you're fool, he's an import player. He's not even a developed former academy player in the NACL. Like, bro, like, can everyone just admit that NRG had a good, like, 2 months or whatever it was? Like, it was like, it was the playoffs only, and even then it was like mainly the low bracket shit. It was like the playoffs only into Worlds, and that was it. That was it. Like, after that, they just went back to being like an okay team. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. Like, look at the roster. It's not bad. It's not terrible, but it's clearly not some stacked giga roster. They clearly haven't revolutionized coaching. Blah, blah, blah. Like, they got everyone got high on their own supply on that one, Monty. They went too far.
They let go of all their positional coaches, right? The whole thing was like,
some of them,
we have one coach per player, right? And that was really, that was supposedly some of the special sauce that had them going. But they cut costs and they cut all of those coaches, and it's like, okay. Now they've kind of devolved into this. And I do think it was funny that there were rumors that they were trying to get Ignar back As if this was going to be the piece that helped them. Like, come on. Like, Ignar isn't going to make you a good team again. Like, whatever.
Also, remember, this is the other thing that's criminal about Ignar's career, is Ignar should actually, it's just because he doesn't int as badly, he should have like a Hylissang rep. Mate, the second it goes to like ranged supports, who gives a shit anymore about him?
His enchanter play is horrible.
The engage, exactly. Like, people act like he's just like some complete play, because he has won like championships and been international. Like, the problem is, though, he's just such a fucking, like, not totally one-dimensional, but he's such an obviously defined player.
I mean, there's a big difference between his Alistair and his Lulu. Let's say that.
Exactly. So put it this way, if he comes back and he plays well, is that suddenly going to change it? Probably not. Come on.
I mean, also who he historically has been a good engage support as well. So it's not even like you're getting a big engage upgrade, right? And also, shouldn't who he have established synergy with FBI as it is from their, I don't know, years of playing together? So feels not great to be an NRG fan right now. I mean, even 100 Thieves, like, people will praise 100 Thieves for winning this series, but they didn't deserve to win it, man. Like, the TP play was horrible. Like, 100 Thieves is a team that you love 100 Thieves because you like to watch Sniper play weird picks and 1v1 people in lane. Like, Quid is just dumpstering people in Ezreal. Like, they're good at skirmishes, but this team is appalling at macro, just appalling. Like, they cannot set up a play to save their lives. And in fact, when they try and set up plays, oftentimes they give the opponents kills because their setups are so bad. You know, Sniper's TP is like a light year away from anyone else on his team, and the rest of his team dies by the time he slowly walks there. They don't have the vision control, but Quid is individually skilled. Got to hand him that. Like, the mid Ezreal on the, Ezreal got buffed on 14-12. He shows everybody's going to be picking and banning Ezreal soon, guys. He's extremely strong. Quids show that in the mid lane. Also, apparently, very good matchup into Tristana, because Palafox was playing super scared. Now, Palafox isn't a very good AD mid player. That hasn't been his identity. But he was very concerned about extended trades with Quid and wasn't really comfortable pushing out with Tristana during that laning phase to put pressure onto the map, which really hurt NRG. And they drafted a composition with, this composition is just hilarious. Like Smolder with Twisted Fate top lane. What the fuck are you supposed to do with this? How does this win a game? You basically have to get a pick into their backline, but how do you do that? You're dealing with Ezreal and Kai'Sa, and you have Peel coming from Nautilus. What is this Twisted Fate TP? He uses ult into the backline, and then what? They just dash away. You just press E on Ezreal. How do you get the follow-up damage or enough target damage to actually kill anybody here? There is no other backline access.
Well, there's so many champions can escape on their team's metal in it.
Yeah.
Like, almost every single one can.
Twisted Fate actually useless. So yeah, I thought this was really, really underwhelming from 100 Thieves, in spite of the fact that they 2-0'd this. I was not left feeling good. It was just like, wow, this team is good at laning and literally nothing else.
Here's the question then, Monty. Question 1. Who is the best team in the LCS?
Liquid. I don't even think that's hard.
They can win Liquid?
Yeah. I think Liquid is clearly the best because they have the tools in order to actually turn on their brains and use macro, and they have comprehensive teamwork. I think Liquid is clearly the best team at the moment. Like, all the other teams are very flawed.
Problem is, it looks like it's fucking ages till they play anyone good. Fucking hell. They don't play C9 till... Fucking hell. They play C9 like second to last week. We have to wait forever for that. They play Dignitas in week 4. It's going to take a while before we see him against anyone good is the problem. Who's the second best team then? Who are you plumping for? C9? FlyQuest?
I'm really hoping it's C9, man. I don't want it to be FlyQuest, but we'll see how Quad, evolves with this roster, just like Thanatos. I think whoever manages to bring the Korean and integrate them into the team play faster is going to be the team that does well, but I don't have a lot of hope for either of those teams, frankly.
Having 2 players and also a fucking mid lane play called Quid and Quad is nightmare fuel also for the broadcast. Like,
just bring
when's
back
that
Cross.
Fucking game? Yeah, when's that game happening? So 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest, let me see. There's the worst game to cast of all time. Right, it's in week 5. That nightmare, that mid lane matchup is a fucking nightmare if you are a caster. I can't even handle it.
By the way,
Quid versus Quad.
shout out to LCS. Another thing that I want to mention is that they got rid of Super Weeks, and Super Weeks fucking sucked. You know, it was just randomly an extra day full of games. I love the fact that we actually, you know, it feels like this is the appropriate amount of League of Legends for North America, Thorin. Like, we get the best of threes, which I like. There's 2 best of threes a day. We have 7 weeks of competition. We don't have super weeks. It's like, I have to watch so much other League of Legends for LCK and LPL. And going into LCS, like, I know it's not going to be great in terms of gameplay, but there are things I like about it in terms of the matchups or the players or the hype around it, right? And this is the perfect, like, bite-sized amount of League of Legends every week for North America, so it doesn't just overwhelm and annoy me, if you know what I mean. But having those 3-day weeks was very annoying and just completely unnecessary. I am so happy that we only have 8 teams in this league now, because it just feels more manageable from a time perspective to watch LCS. So I think this is, if I had it my way, Thorin, we'd be doing this in LEC. We'd be doing this in LCK. We don't need 10 teams in LCK, guys. We don't. I don't need to see those fucking Nongshim players ever again. I don't need to watch that, right? I don't need to watch.
The jungler and support probably be in LEC in a year if you look at the current record of how we're importing players. You know, it's all the fucking shit to DRX players all fucking playing Europe now, mate. So whatever. It's all good. All live sandbox fuckers. So you know what? Send them to Europe, mate. Send them over to Europe.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Like, I would like to bolster, you know, have fewer tier 1 teams so we have better tier 1 teams or more interesting tier 1 teams. LCK doesn't need this many teams. I'm just so glad that LCK is going to be moving away from double round robin, because they can't do that anymore with the 3 split system. You know, I'm happy we're going to see new formats.
Oh, so it's just going to be like a single round robin, you think?
I don't know. No, I don't think they're going to. So first off, the first split is likely to be, they've said it's going to be a tournament, because you have to domestically qualify for that.
Dude, that's cool.
The first split,
it's like OGN style.
Yeah, the first split's supposed to be like lock-in. Right, I think it's supposed to be like lock-in from LCS, because that is the part that qualifies the team to go to the new first international one, where they have the 5 teams from the major regions. So you have to actually play the tournament.
Just literally run like a double elim bracket or something. Just have like a playoffs basically. Yep. I think that would be dope way to start the year.
I like lock-in. So, you know, they've said that, you know, they're going to qualify teams into that. They've implied that they are going to run different formats for different splits, which I also like to keep things interesting and fresh potentially. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, the LCK and LPL are going to have to, I think, be very different.
Just thought of a great idea. I've just thought of a great idea. Since all you want to ruin League of Legends because you've just decided the novelty and the thrill of Fearless draft is so awesome, fuck it. I've realised I can't battle you guys, so I'm just going to accelerate everything so it ruins it for everyone. So I think we should have a Fearless roster move where you can't play anyone who played in the previous game. You have to, because here's the thing, guys, it'll just diversify teams and it'll expand the league and there'll be more players and we'll get... And you know what? Since I've been told, Monty, diversity is our strength, and by having more different players, we'll just get even better League of Legends with more like exploration. So basically, if you have Faker in game 1, you have to put Poppy in for game 2, and then in game 3, it's Reckless or something. You know, there you go. I'll ruin the whole game for you. You can't. You want to ruin draft? I'll ruin the whole game for you. There you go.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, it's back to the Easy Hoon era, right?
Yeah, basically. And also, technically, that's a joke, but the one thing that would actually test, to be fair, Monty, is how good the coach was. That'd be like some, you know, pro league in Brood War. Like, you got to pick the guy to snipe the right player. Like, that would be interesting. It's obviously nonsense, though. Just make it up. It's all
good. So, yeah. Look, I am excited for potentially new formats. I don't like watching double round robin in LCK. There's so many bad matches that happen. We have to wait so long in between good matches. I mean, obviously what I would welcome is just back to a 3 tournament a year structure like when I was casting, you know, in Korea. That was great. And what the fuck was wrong with that? Nothing. Please bring that back. I mean,
by the way, I would even think for real, if I were them, Monty, I would just make one split OGN champions. Dude, imagine how awesome the rollback would be now if you did like an actual like groups into the single. That would actually be, because it would even like call back to the ancient days. It'd be fucking sick, wouldn't it?
Well, Thorin, they would have to admit they were wrong, which is very difficult for Riot to do. You know, if they do that, they are basically flying the flag of surrender that their stupid format was a giant failure and was super boring.
I like the way every single time there's a moment where you could just say, I'll just eat a tiny little bit of humble pie and make things better for everyone. Right? It's like, oh, well, I'm going to be in pain. And you're like, why? They got to cut my nose off again to spite my face. Like, no, right? You don't have to do that. Just say sorry. You can keep your nose and have your face and enjoy League of Legends. No, we have to do it. Right, get out the Stanley knife. Oh, not again. Every time, bro. Every time. Like, what I don't get is this. That's why it's so underwhelming for real that they also sold out to the Saudis. So we couldn't have nice things a million times over for 10 plus years. But then when you get in a jam, just sell it all to just give it all to the Saudis. Like, what the fuck? Like, we could have been having an awesome game. Think about this, Monty. Couldn't we have had ESL, I don't know, before they got bought by the Saudis? They could have been white labeling you one tournament a year the whole time and made it awesome. You could have, and by the way, you know the other thing that was so dumb about the fact that they actually kicked out the MLGs and the ESLs of the world from the league circuit is they were the masters of the road show. Because their whole business is roadshow. Their whole business is go to a venue, sometimes that they've never been to before, and every single time, without fail, Monty, get all that scaffolding and that stage set up and all the tech done, and then the tournament always begins, in theory, at the right time on the first day of the tournament. That is skills. Like, Riot, they, as we just talked about in this episode, they very rarely even do the roadshow for their own region. Like, and they do it sparingly, and even then, by the way, I imagine they just leave most of the things to the fucking event people probably work with them. Like, you should have always had these, but these were the specialists in esports. MLG in America obviously knows everything about venues, the laws, how you set it up. Like, these people are the masters. It was actually just it really is cut off your nose to spite your face that they just like eschewed these people from the industry. Because as you see, Riot themselves weren't better. They were maybe good sometimes. They've had a few times they've done a good event or two.
Yeah.
I think these people are the king. Like, ESL's the best at doing events in my opinion. Like, they're just fabulous, mate.
Yeah, the live events and obviously MLG and then Esports Engine, what it became, that later got bought by ESL and brought into the fold.
ESL, yeah.
They're basically North American ESL, but those were, Adam Apicella and Sundance and all the old MLG people that, Blizzard bought MLG and then they went off and formed their new MLG, which was called Esports Engine. And then that got bought by ESL. So, it's all been all those guys, but it's been the same people.
This is the mistake we're making, mate. I even did this joke, by the way, in the beginning of like the fucking Reflections interview I did with Hex from Optic. And even though normally Hex, a guy who can handle banter, I don't think he actually appreciated it, Monty. He was like, I could tell he was like 1% peeved at my implication. Because at the beginning of the interview, my joke was that he's actually discovered the infinite money glitch in esports. Because all he keeps doing is building up Optic and then selling it to people, then buying it back for cheaper later when they don't want it. And I said, you've just like got the glitch, mate. You keep getting the org back and all the money in the meantime. But the joke is like, that's actually where we're fools, Monty. As you say, they just keep building up companies, selling them, then getting rehired by that company, then selling it again. Like, we just fucking sell our time, mate. We're plebs. We need to actually build this company up. By the way, I'll tell you what, if we ever did do a heel turn and just sold out full on to the Saudis, I'd have to quit esports if that happened. I'd have to go live on an island somewhere. You know what I mean? I'd have to leave at that point. I couldn't show my face after that.
No, Thorin. What you do is you use all that money to build a fortress and just live behind your giant security wall.
There you go.
Just keep making content behind your security fence.
Oh,
oh man. We should talk about the opening to LCK a little bit, guys.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's talk about another sponsor that we have for this show, which is, of course, HelloFresh. Welcome back, HelloFresh. I'm actually, I'm going to be starting my cooking streams again soon. But actually, Thorin, where I started my cooking streams was using HelloFresh. That was one of the things that I was doing, was making HelloFresh recipes. I actually got one of their like premium meal kits that had like steak and lobster tails in it. It was very good. So they'll even ship you lobster tails to cook, so you could learn how to do that if you want. That was a fun one. So obviously meal planning can take a lot of time. So I actually liked using HelloFresh a lot. I used it for over a year, my last year in Los Angeles. I would still use it if I could here in Korea. But basically, like, I'm very good at meal planning and everything like that. But it was just a relief to get that box every week and have a couple of meals that I didn't really have to think about. It also helped me, they had quick lunches that take like 10, 20 minutes to make. So in the middle of the day, it was nice to be able just to go to my kitchen and make those from scratch myself. So they have over 50 recipes a week right now. It gets all put into a box for you, shipped off to your house. You open it up.
And they cycle them, by the way, as well. It's not the same ones every, like they keep the menu updated. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a bunch of market items, so you can get snacks and desserts and appetizers and absolutely everything, in there with all these meals. They have different kinds of meals, obviously, depending on different diets. So, it's very good. Everything is pre-proportioned, so it helps reduce food waste compared to groceries, because we all buy too much of things, and so you get the exact right amount, which is really nice. But for me, it was really, I enjoy cooking, and if you want to learn how to do cooking, they have obviously the recipe cards, super easy. You only really have to have like olive oil, butter, salt, and pepper most of the time. They send you the spice blends. They send you all the rest of the ingredients. So yeah, it's great. I've really enjoyed it when I've had it in the past. When I get back to the States, I think I'll enjoy it again. So
that sounds really interesting, Monty. But if I was to get that, how would I save money?
That's right.
LFN.
You can go to HelloFresh.com/LFN apps. That's LFNAPPS for free appetizers for life. One appetizer item per box while the subscription is active. That's free appetizers for life at HelloFresh.com/LFN apps. But I have used HelloFresh extensively myself without being sponsored by them, guys, purely of my own volition. And I really enjoyed it. So they are also the same company that does Factor, who is a sponsor on a show, not this week, but many weeks. If you prefer the other meals, also those are the ready-made ones that are shipped to your door. But if you guys are looking to get into cooking, HelloFresh, definitely check it out. All right.
By the way, I actually saw a comment related to our sponsors. Normally, if it's BM, I wouldn't read out, but I thought you would just appreciate this. And you can also send this message to Susie. She'll also appreciate it. There was a comment from a cynical hater in the YouTube comments, right, where they said about some other thing, about how we're like full of shit with our sponsor, whatever. And one of the things they said, Monty, that made me laugh so hard, is they said, it's like when Monty pretends he uses that HelloFresh thing, even though he has a Korean wife who obviously cooks for him all the time. It's like, you don't even know who Susie is, bro. Not only one, do you not know Monty? He actually does for real, even for fun, off camera cook. But also the idea because you've seen Susie's Korean, sort of, you're thinking she's like some traditional Korean. You're God, it's insane, mate. Not on your Nelly, mate. Not on your Nelly. I love it.
it. I do all of the cooking in my house, guys. All of it. Literally.
No, guys, she worked full-time in esports all that time. She wasn't just like some fucking stay-at-home mom or something. Like she is now, but that was not the way it was back then. Not at all.
Oh, yeah, but
the joke is she even herself always bragged she loves Monty's cooking.
Yeah. And I also cook Korean food better than she does. So
there you go.
She does make some good stuff. But I do basically all of the cooking in my house. But I enjoy
don't know that,
I love it.
It's why I actually thought it was a perfect sponsor to have, because actually one of the things Monty did for many years when he lived in LA was host people for dinners at his house and cook them like actual, like, I mean, the funny thing is I liked it, Monty, because it was all like British food. You would always do like steak and
I know my audience.
Mince and dumplings or something, or steak and ale pie or something like that, basically hearty food, right?
Yeah.
By the way, perfect food to have if you're going to have a group of friends around too. So also, that's another reason why it's worth learning to cook. There's another reason why sponsors like that are legit, because it will teach you the basics of cooking. And then the other thing is as well, once you've done these recipes a few times, eventually you can also freelance a little bit. You can try changing one item in and out, or take the things you're not as fond of, and it'll level you up a bit. Because I actually do think as well, there's one thing that people undervalue massively nowadays. Nowadays, when people have a social activity, they want to go out and eat in like some restaurant or something, Monty. I think it is way more intimate to like friends and people like that to cook for them, of course. Oh, yeah. Especially, by the way, if the person's good, it's fucking awesome. Yeah. You love going to someone's house who can cook. It's the shit.
Yeah. I just prefer quieter environments, and I don't like to be bounded by time in a restaurant or anything like that. And, I used to have big parties in my house. I mean, I would have birthday parties for Papa Smithy. I'd make him prime rib or Doa. We had a big party for Doa one year where I smoked like 30 pounds of brisket, so good stuff. I always enjoy doing that. So yes,
I had a party once where I smoked 30 pounds, but it wasn't a brisket, believe it or not. So whatever. Shout out to the other sponsor we had back
Amsterdam.
in the day. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shout out. That's why I'm actually so sad that no one's ever made any meme content around that. Because there's that Brazilian org called Loud. Obviously, they're famous from Valorant, famously. If people don't know the slang in American hip hop culture, it's like when you say I'm smoking loud, you mean you smoke weed, right? Why has no one ever thought, like on Sentinels or something, making like a fucking banter video like that? Like, I just smoke loud. So I'd have done that ages ago, mate. I'd have done that ages ago. Ages.
All right, LCK. So we did see LCK start off this week. We just finished, actually, I haven't seen the games yet, obviously, but T1 did just beat D+. I
would have given you the update if they'd won.
While we were doing the show.
Exactly, yeah. Just for the live reaction, but sadly they won.
I will be doing VOD reviews tomorrow on my stream of those games, so I will check them out tomorrow. But we did have a pretty interesting opening week. Gen G as dominant as ever. Some very weird roster moves. Some of them worked better than others. FearX decided, you know what? We hate our best player, Willer. Let's just put him into the tier 2 scene and bring up this Raptor guy. Like, I have no idea. I mean, was Willer causing problems behind the scenes? Because he was by far the best player on this roster. I think he's like legitimately quite a good jungler, and he was way too good for this team. So I'm hopeful he can end up on a better team at some point in time. What else did we see? We saw Leaper.
Well, luckily they were playing against Nongshim, so in the end it was all good, man. No problem on that one.
We did see the debut of Leaper, who is a very interesting player who used to be on the DRX like Challengers team and then stopped.
Like I joked earlier, they've had a lot of fucking talent they've brought through over the years, it seems like.
So, I mean, CV Backs, right? He's back. But I mean, it is wild that they brought in this guy because the last time he played competitively was on this DRX, tier 2 team. In 2020, he was a streamer and YouTuber and then got pulled directly into the professional scene at 24 years old and has looked very good so far. So he is a really surprising rookie, and Bull looked good right out of the gate too, right? And then Bull fell off over time.
I wanted to ask you that. What do you think it's the right move to switch to this other guy? Because obviously he was very promising, the Bull player.
Yeah, he was at first, but he was not doing well by the end. And like maybe the same thing will happen with this Leaper guy. And I do have I love this Guangdong Freaks roster because I like Cuz a lot, and I think Andil is actually very good too. Remember, he took some time off because he was sick or injured in the spring, which did actually hurt them because Quantum was a lot worse, and I think that really held them back because part of what was so good about Bull's coming in was the Bull Andil lane that was doing so well. But I do have reservations about this, Thorin, because Bulldog is basically just like abusing Corki and Tristana, and they're playing kind of one note, which is like, okay, we're just going to play double AD carry, Bulldog. He's playing Trist or Corki. Corki's been changed, guys, so Corki is actually much better in the early game now than he used to be, but he scales less well late, basically. And so what we're seeing is that Bulldog has never had a good laning phase. He's actually been very bad at lane. So what Tristan and Corki are allowing him to do is like cover up his weaknesses in the laning phase, and they kind of play just one style. So I want to see them dimensionalize this more. But at least Guangdong's start has been impressive. I mean, they're 3-0 after tonight. They play T1 this week. Obviously, that's going to be the real test there, considering. But they did beat KT to start off the season, although KT does look really bad.
And they had that different top laner guy.
Casting was all right.
You look at the names. The names are pretty wild if you look at them.
Yeah, apparently Perfect was sick, but also Perfect was not sick enough that he couldn't be subbed in the
I know.
the series.
So
they played against D+. It's like,
he's playing bad. You're no longer ill. How does that work?
It's like, he comes in, he's playing against KT, casting plays against KT, and he's like, after game 1, they're like, all right, Perfect, doesn't matter if you're sick, you're back in. But Perfect, I think, has been the best player on this KT team in the games that we've seen so far. And he was improving quite a lot throughout spring. So I think he's still a very promising player, but KT is just disgusting at this point. Like Pioshik and Barrel and Deft are just playing so tragically bad, that BDD also looks pretty mediocre, at least in the first week of competition, but Guangdong just hammering them was still a surprise.
Oh, mate, that KT roster is just fucking suffering because the problem is the roster isn't quite bad enough that I just don't care at all. I still do care about some of those players, but they just fucking suck as a team, mate. It's such a bad squad. It's just bad. And people are going to think, Monty, like, obviously for some of the other ones, like everyone saw Pureshik was even a meme in fucking LCS, mate. Beryl's been a meme for years. But they're going to think, Deft, he was washed after work. Like, Deft was actually good on D+ last year, Monty. You know that. He was like probably the one player who actually consistently did perform most of the time. So it's just tragic he's on another whack team. Like, what the fuck? Like, by the way, this team isn't going to be the fucking one that... Here's what's sad. I'm telling you right now, guys. As of this moment, like, KT probably isn't going to Worlds. They're probably not going to get one of those spots. Think how tragic that is with these players, mate. Come on.
I mean, the thing is the world slots are actually quite competitive because you have Gen.G and T1 that you assume are going to get there. Hanwha, even though they have also been playing badly so far this split, like Doran and Peanut have just been not good. You assume they at least have the talent to get it together over the course of summer. And then D+ is actually exceeding expectations now in many ways. Like Showmaker was much better in spring. Lucid actually looked really good in the first week of competition. Their mid-game shot calling appears to be not good, but maybe somewhat better than it was previously. And we're in a meta where Aiming can play Zeri, and Aiming is a very high resource AD carry. And if he gets fed, he could do a lot of damage on some of these like ultra carries. You know, we've seen him pull out the Xayah again already as well. So it feels like a good meta for Aiming to really be dominant, and the form that we had seen him in previous iterations like KT, right? So, you know, this is a guy who I think can pull his weight if the meta doesn't shift too far away.
The good thing is, Monty, having seen this guy play in all regions, he played at the LPL back in the day, he was in LCK on fucking Afrika years and years ago. The good thing about him is this: even though he himself can throw a game like a motherfucker, he actually is one of those players who can sort of exist in the chaos of a bad team, though I've noticed. He's been in some scuffed rosters where he can still pull off a carry game here and there if you give him the right draft.
Yeah, so we've already said 4 teams basically, like Gen.G, T1, Hanwha, and D+. And then where KT and Kwangdong in this mix. Like, Kwangdong just pretty convincingly beat KT. Not so, like, I love Kwangdong, and I really hope that they do well, but it's going to be hard to get those the fourth seed. There's a battle for that 4th seed that's going to actively happen, and you just have to feel like with the individual strength on this roster, and the fact that Pureshik and Beryl both looked super washed at this point in time, where is this really going for them? Like, is this a team that's going to see some sort of sudden and crazy resurgence? Maybe playing with casting, even though casting individually didn't look bad, was tough because he was maybe an emergency substitution for Perfect, a player that they had been developing synergy with. But even if that's the case, like, I think all of these other teams have significantly larger strengths than KT. And I mean, despite how bad Brion, Furex, and Nongshim are, I don't see them like really making a play for top 4 at a World's Birth.
By the way, one thing I do want to bring up, though, since we just skipped past all the top teams, is I'll tell you what, Monty, considering how whack fucking Pays was in that LCK final, mate, from MSI and now into LCK, he's on a fucking heater this last month and a half or so. Like, he's really leveled his game up again.
Also, I mean, just that T1 game where the criticism you would levy against Gen.G was, oh, well, the Hens and Pays aren't that good in lane, right? Oh, well, it's what we said. I think rightfully so before MSI. BLG really has a chance to win. They can just dominate through they play through bot lane. You know, they can dominate that laning phase. They can snowball through the bot lane to a win. But you know what? Gen.G has been slowly getting better. The last, the second round robin game they played against T1. They won, and they T1 tried to attack them through weaknesses in the bot lane, and they played, Aphelios Lulu in that series, and they did very well on it. They did well at MSI. And then now we get into this round robin, and we're seeing, holy shit, Gen.G just absolutely dumpstering T1 in the bot lane. Not even close. And remember, you guys will look at some of these pace highlights and be like, is this 14-12? No, he's playing on the 14-11. It's 14-12 this week, guys. This is the Ezreal patch. He was doing this and those tower dives before the Ezreal was buffed.
By the way, we referenced this earlier, but we actually forgot because they had to do it. Dude, we should talk about that intro, though, because I'll tell you what, this actually made me realize, bro, every region's been idiots. Like every region, obviously only EU won that one time for MSI, but every region that wins like a world or an international tournament, you should do this. Have the team come back to your region and like all celebrate them and like give them an ovation. I think that was dope what they did for Gen G. Not only they raided LCK champions, but they just won MSI. I thought that was really cool. They should do that for everyone. I think it's a really cool like initiative.
Anchovy with the rings.
Oh, by the way, those rings also look baller. Because I've always thought, Monty, the two things Americans do the best in sports, sadly, one of them you've now ruined, was all those amazing like hockey fucking icons of the mascots. I always thought that like branding was amazing. Think about like the San Jose Sharks, famously Monty, like that one with the shark break and the hockey sticking off. Mm-hmm. That's cool. But also the other thing is rings for championships. Like those rings, if you win like the NBA or the NFL, are fucking dope. You know, the ones where like they encrust like a million jewels into it. And like some of them have like cross section that comes out and says the year. Yeah. Mate, those look baller. Because as you see with Gen G, like there, what you want that for, Monty, is to flash the rings like that. When you flash up a bunch of rings, it's just gangster in it. That's how you know you're a god at that point. Yeah. And by the way, if I were Faker, I'd come in with the 10 rings. Obviously, bring the 10, be the Lord of the Rings. Do it.
And you know, I did see you tweet like just put Chovy in the chair already, which they should do.
The thing I was thinking. Think about Monty. People are going to forget this. It's not like they waited till Faker won 10 to put him in the throne. I think he was in the throne after like 2 or 3 championships.
Winter 2013. He was in the throne. He was in the throne.
That's the first year
after
he
his
played,
first Worlds.
So if Chovy's won 4 in a row and MSI, I think it's appropriate he gets the chair now to sort of be. By the way, if you want to make it really cool, even have Faker sort of passing the torch, like he gets up and then Chovy sits down. I'd do something cool like that, you know. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you could even put them both in the chair. You know what I mean? Like to show that they're both different chairs. Like, you know, there is probably a very cool scene of them like facing off against each other, like looking at each other chair to chair or something like that with their teammates around them on the sides. Like there's probably some really fucking cool visual imagery you could do with that. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's time, but also, you know, I think probably for Riot, they're concerned that people would, I don't know. Does Riot have the authority, if you know what I mean, to do something like that? Or do they even want to call back to kind of the StarCraft or OGN eras, right? Because it does remind people of what
the Koreans themselves don't want to do it. Yeah, I would think the Koreans would want to do it for that reason, to sort of like embrace the tradition, right?
Yeah, and especially because a lot of the people who are producing LCK are the same people who worked at OGN back in the day. Like basically when League of Legends left, Riot just hired a bunch of those same producers and same staff people to continue on with LCK. So it's not even like, you know, I don't think it's that outrageous, as it were. So yeah, look, I think it's time, obviously, and especially with Chovy's continuing performances. I mean, even that Gen GT1 game, the fact that Chovy just one lane playing Yone into Tristana is just ridiculous. Like it is ridiculous that he ends this laning phase 20 CS up on Faker in a lane that's designed to push him in. I mean, he was playing this champion at MSI and like gracefully losing. Like I don't think Chovy had his best performance at MSI, but he was still a rock in the mid lane. He was still a rock and like just basically, you know, counterpicking himself with Yone a bunch of times and still being relevant in these games.
The thing I'm waiting for this split and for the rest of this year, I mean, it's easily summarized by will Gen G, which by the way, when I say Gen G, I just mean Chovy. Will Chovy do the Golden Road? Because the reason why him winning the Grand Slam is so exciting is I actually do think, Monty, for real, the way he played in that LCK final, and especially at MSI, he has never played that consistently high level. He always would have the off game or a time when he's just a bit more subdued, or he'd have like a couple of good games with a couple of bad games. I've never seen him consistently keep the level at that high. Like he really does deserve Bonjo status. So I think people don't realize they're using that narrative of like he's a choker. Maybe he isn't anymore. Maybe he actually has overcome that last hurdle. Now he's just going to run the fucking game, mate. Because that would be pretty spicy too. That would be pretty cool if he's like a confident Chovy that doesn't have any fear and just destroys people.
I mean, I think you would be crazy to not believe he's the best player in the world right now. I don't even know what the next argument would be. You know, people would say, Knight. But
there's too many BLG players in general just didn't look as good by the end of MSI,
right.
Isn't there? Like Elk obviously fell off a fucking cliff, didn't he? Like everyone was hyping the fuck out of him going to that tournament. He never made it through.
I do think that we should be careful about how we evaluate Gen G, because this is a very good meta for them. Like, obviously, like what will happen is the MSI champion who convincingly won MSI is now back playing domestically on a meta that is unbelievably good for them. You know, Chovy has been the AD mid guy. He has been the Tristana mid guy, right? And so we expect him to be able to play these champions. And now we've stumbled into, wait for it, Canyon playing AP carries. He gets the Nidalee. He gets the Karthus. Like, it's ridiculous that they're in this meta right now. Oh, and what's that? Oh, Pays can play Zeri again? That's his signature champion. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels so much better. When T1 was in their meta and it's like double 80 carry Hail of Blades in the bot lane, play through the bot side, you know, and Keen is out there. And you know what? Keen's obviously my favorite player who's active right now, but he just does his fucking job, man. And it's like, yes, he's going to pick Skarner if it's open, because that's what you should do. And he's going to just do his fucking job. And sure, they do give him a lot of counter picks, and sometimes he pulls out the Darius or like crazy carry champions, or he plays Rise into Rumble and all his weird stuff. And he can absolutely carry. That's why everybody bans Rumble against him, because his Rumble is one of the best Rumbles in the entire fucking world out of that top lane. But, you know, if Casante's strong, he's going to play Casante. If Skarner's strong, he's just going to play Skarner. He's just going to first pick it. Like, they don't have to think about it. They don't have to make things super complicated. And T1 is still there, stuck with like, well, I guess we're just going to pick Zeus, the same champion, whether it's Aatrox and now it's Twisted Fate, over and over and over and over blind. And it's like, what advantages are you getting, T1, in these drafts? You keep picking blind champs, you know, or the same champ for Zeus, but it doesn't actually turn into wins. And this is a terrible meta for T1. Like, I don't think Faker is the same level of player on Tristana that you know,
not.
a player like Chovy or Caps is, right? And it's like, yes, Faker was enabled by a lot of these control mages that he's been playing for his entire career. But now that is maybe not the best option anymore, let's see what Faker can do. So maybe they haven't figured out their angle yet. Maybe they haven't figured out the way they're going to draft. But even Keria doesn't look super strong right now. And their bot lane has to be, you know, the younger players have to be the heart of this team. So where's the carry potential going to come from? Who actually has these draft priorities would be my question. You know, they're trying to put owner on Talia in the jungle, and Talia can be strong, but like Genji, Canyon is the jungle Talia player.
Oh, of course.
That's who he is. He was playing jungle Talia. They were flexing it on D+ last year when it wasn't even meta. So I think it's tough. I think it's going to be really tough for T1. They feel really lost. Like, why are we picking Jinrel? Jinrel isn't a lane that does things, and then we're just getting dove under our turret, and Pays is just styling on us mechanically. But Pays, like you say, Pays did look really good in the T1 series. Really good. And I've been the big Pays critic.
Oh, of course.
Because I don't think he's bad. I just don't think he should be the main character of this roster. He
never got that memo, though. That's the thing. He thinks he is the main character. He thinks he's Uzi, mate. That's the worst part. He actually does. I can tell.
It's like, no, dude, you are like, you should be the 4th or 5th best player on this team at any given point in time.
To me, if anything, that's the one aspect of Gen G that I don't think they fully unlocked, is I think most of the time, like you've said, Keen is just the soldier who's like, I'll just do whatever's necessary. If I were them, I'd be having way more games where I just let him carry, if you know what I mean, and just tell them, like, Praise, your name is to be Praise right now, because your job is just fucking let this top laner carry, because he could carry more of these games if he wanted to. But he's just being a good boy as a top laner.
But that's what I like about him, is like, he does what the meta demands. And that's why I think he's underrated by a lot of people. Like, people don't understand that having a stable top laner who is basically a jack of all trades who can do anything is a lot better than having like a pure carry top laner. Like, as weird as that sounds, because people, you know, top lane is also like a role where the only time people notice you is if you do have those like giant plays, and if you are playing the really flashy champions. And so that's how you become a star. And that also, Thorin, is how you get money, right? That's how you get the big contracts. And Keen's just not that guy. Keen is just playing for the team, which is how you should be playing out of the top lane, right? And that's why I love him. But he's never going to get the same plaudits as like a guy like Bin or Zeus, because he's not as flashy. And he won't, you know, go for those reach picks in certain situations or in big situations. Instead, he'll just become the best K'Sante player in the world. And unfortunately, that rep becomes like, oh, he's just playing K'Sante and K'Sante's broken. True. That is true. But also, if you guys have eyes, you should be able to tell there's a difference between Keen's K'Sante and the average like pro level K'Sante. But it always, then people just boil it down to, oh, but Keen's just abusing the OP like bruiser pick. I mean, yes, but he also wants to win a game of fucking League of Legends. You know what I mean? So Keen doesn't have an ego, right? He's a very egoless player. So I just love watching this guy play. I love his versatility, and I love the way he plays top lane, and I love the role he has within this team. And maybe he should be enabled a little bit more, but also he's not demanding a huge amount of resources to be extremely effective.
I've got a question for you, Monty, and this is actually something I actually find mad that no one is discussing. Bro, logically, doesn't the Esports World Cup start in a month?
Yeah, no, like 2 weeks now. 2 weeks.
No, that's what I mean, though. So what's happening with the League of Legends tournament? Like, why are we all just like no information? What we waiting for? When's that? Is it in a month from now? When is it?
Yeah, we don't know the format. We know it's going to be 5 or 6 days long. It should be the first week of July. That's when everybody is off.
It's been a week and a half.
They're sending, as far as we know, it's going to be Genji, T1, BLG top. It's going to be the teams that were the major region teams that were at MSI. I'm not going to list them all out, from Europe, North America, China, and Korea. So it's going to be the MSI rematch. I don't know what format it's going to be. It can't be a super robust one because they have very few days to play this game.
Feels like we're waiting a bit of a long time. It's why I wonder, Monty, if for real they might just do what Gamers 8 was, because Gamers 8 and Counter-Strike was just one big single limb bracket. That's all it was. So it was just quite quick, actually. I think it's a week tops. I think they might do something similar here. You just run a simple one, just to get, because you also, in a way, if it's your first time doing it and it's not Riot, you don't want to fuck it up as well. You want to make it nice and simple and just get it done.
Yeah, it also doesn't feel bad because we just had the double limb bracket at MSI. Exactly. So like having a single limb over a week right now is not outrageous. You have 8 teams. It's almost certainly just going to be an 8-team single limb bracket.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And if anything, it's just a mini hyper again, isn't it? You just get a little bit of hype off some matches, but then you wait for Worlds. So perfect.
Yep.
I just realized, though, it's that close, though. It's like fucking right on the doorstep.
2 weeks.
Yeah, but in our minds, though, we're all gearing up for the summer split, aren't we? Like, right, we're back into league mode. And like, it's like, no, actually, we're almost at another tournament, literally.
Yeah. Which is, how normal esports work. But, it's not even. So this tournament is taking place basically 6 weeks after the end of MSI, which is a normal amount of time on an international circuit between major events in almost all esports in esports history that were not League of Legends and forced into this horrible domestic system. So, I mean, it feels good because this is like about the cadence. Do I wish we maybe had 1 or 2 different teams there? Perhaps, but especially because there was a huge patch, after MSI. But.
And also, in the same ways we always pointed out about other regions, like the obvious thing you'd want to see now, Monty, is like the 3rd best teams in all the tournament, wouldn't you? Like, who wouldn't want to watch JDG versus Hanwha Life versus, that'd actually be pretty cool, wouldn't it? It's like a one-off international tournament.
I mean, I don't really want to see like BDS versus Cloud9, but
don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. That's all fine. Yeah, but here's the thing. For that one, what you have to do is, this is what I learned is, the good thing about BDS is, 1, it's humiliating when other teams lose to them. And then 2, they have Adam. So there's that factor that you can, if they lose, you make fun of Adam. If they don't, you go, haha, you lost to Adam. So either way, I win on that one. So I don't mind that one. I'm all good with that. And also, if you notice, I've done that thing where I've used like real analysis. It's a real point, but I used it in a toxic way, Monty, where it's like, actually, Adam, I don't give you credit for winning these games. Your coach gets all the credit. It's like, if he wins the game, I make him seem even dumber. And then this other guy sits even more props for making a dumb like him win the game. So it's kind of a toxic and analytical approach, but I'm going to stick with it. So it's all good. Listen, I did it for Reckless for 10 years. I'm going to keep with it. It's all good.
Yeah. So
I'll make time for Wingro.
Back to the Heat references, of course.
always, mate, always.
Check out our Heat episode
if I ever actually do die because of some nonsense, like I wasted my time doing too many hit pieces on people in eSport, I want my actual gravestone to say he made time for Wingro. Just put that on the gravestone. That'll be my epitaph.
There we go. But yeah, I mean, look, the break is happening. Most teams are playing until June 30th in most regions, and then they're going to go on break until the second week of July. So it will be that first week of July during Riot's break, of course, so they don't have to respond to your angry PR messages on social media. Here's what they'll do, guys. They'll be like, hey, guys, here's their announcement on Twitter. They'll be like, hey, guys, we're taking a break for this week, so we're not answering anything. Goodbye. And then everybody will be like, why are you guys working with the Saudis? And then they won't have to say anything. So that's their very cool strategy.
Have you ever noticed, Monty? Here's a good one. You notice my shit at the moment is to point out things that are actually conspicuous by their absence and no one asks the question. So here's an obvious question I have, Monty. It's weird that you don't see Riot openly addressing all this Saudi shit, because whenever Riot normally does a mea culpa, remember, it always starts like this, Monty. We've heard your concerns and So Magic, they're not listening all of a sudden. That's weird. Normally they're listening to us. They're really giving us real feedback. That's totally authentic and exactly what they want. They're just full of shit, guys. Like the saddest thing about Riot is the last few years, their secret really is what every corporate culture shit does. Like, kill it with silence. If you don't want to comment on why EG gets a temporary spot, don't comment on it. If you don't want to have people, why didn't you do something about Danny? Just don't ever address it. And if you do that, the problem is it's only a few nutters like us that'll keep mentioning it. Most people will get bored and just forget about it and go, that's last week's news, you know. It actually works. That's the saddest thing about that approach. It does work. It does work.
Maybe they should have tried that from the beginning.
By the way, the second the Esports World Cup actually begins and we start watching the match, no one's going to care about all the political shit. I reckon everyone will just forget about it and watch the tournament at that point, mate.
Yeah.
Unless there's some drama, you know.
And as we've said, we will be covering those matches because those are matches that are happening that we are going to talk about as part of the global circuit. And, you know, here's the thing. There is no effect on boycotting it for us because the Saudis aren't paying us money and we can actually just say how bad it is while we do the analysis, which actually is negative PR from them. It's giving them what they don't want, guys. What they want is to host this event, pay people to say nice things about them and look good, not have somebody look at the gameplay, take the fan base and then galvanize against this effort, right? So there actually isn't a point if you are independent of not covering this event, in my opinion, because it doesn't say anything about the event, right? So it's not the same thing as like a team participating and then taking the money in return for not saying the mean things, or not even mean. True things, the true things.
Factually accurate, exactly.
Just factual things. But yeah, back to LCK. Look, I think this first week, a lot of the teams were pretty shaky. We're expecting this. It was the same shit in LEC. It's a giant patch that's coming in. A lot of these teams haven't been practicing, but Gen.G still look absolutely terrifying. And this meta, until this meta goes away, we should assume that Gen.G is just going to continue dominating. Feels like it's going to be extremely difficult to beat them.
Also, just a good time to be a Chovy fan again, because now you don't have to watch him on fucking Azir and Oriana and shit. You just get to see him dominate. Like him on Tristan is a dream. He's going to fucking destroy everyone.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. We should talk a little bit about LPL too. I mean, as far as LEC goes, guys, like what are we gonna say at this point in time? Like, I feel like LEC is at a state in terms of its gameplay and its level of excitement where this first phase just feels like you're weeding out some really terrible teams and that it's not going to get good again. Although we do have Fnatic versus G2 next week, so obviously we'll be discussing that one. But this last week of competition was rather uninspiring.
It's not very. There's nothing really interesting because I'll summarize the league very briefly. G2 could literally even lose the opening games, and nobody for 1 second, including G2, ever thought. So I mean, they won't win. Like that's already a foregone conclusion. They're essentially like they will turn the. They already have. Fnatic. Oh, what's that? Fnatic did really awesome early in the season. Looked really strong. I wonder if they can beat G2 now. Oh wait, I've seen this fucking show before, and Dick Dastardly never wins wacky races, so I'm going to go ahead and say no. And then what? Are you ready for the third one? This is going to really blow your mind. But BDS LCS is sort of playing in a way where you look and you go, they're not that great, but somehow they do get all the throws and punish the opponents. But yeah, I thought their individual players were better. So there's that one again, same exact storyline. And then lastly, the maddest one of all is you're always waiting for that extra team to come along to be like the extra challenger, right? Vitality was supposed to be it because of the link I signed up. That's actually been pretty bad so far. Heretics is still a fucking train wreck. And the actual joke of all is it's actually probably SK is probably the one that's joining the elite crew now with that like weird Korean bot lane they've imported and got rid of Exakick. So the league's just in a weird spot. Yeah, it's in a weird spot.
But at the same time, you know that, even with Rahel and Luan, who have had a very strong debut, it's not like this is going to be the thing that puts them over the top for G2, right?
No, but it could make them like a world's team or something, Could give them that spot, last spot. Maybe.
Yeah. I think like maybe they can take a third place, but there hasn't been enough of a mix-up within what we've seen and all of the roster moves that look like, hey, maybe they'll do something. I mean, I guess Carbine Corp is like slightly better, but not that much better. You know what I mean?
Not have a couple of players,
Yeah, not better enough to be interesting. I mean, to the surprise of nobody who actually watched LCK, Kana is not an immense top laner. Like he was pretty mid-tier and limited, and certainly didn't provide shot calling that Carbine Corp desperately needed because D+ had terrible shot calling while he was on it. And we haven't seen him be overly impressive on this Carbine Corp roster. I mean, he's had some plays where he's punished the opponents at times. Like I think in week 1, like he did help them beat MDK and like have that comeback by having some, punishing Frescowi from going in on LeBlanc, but his laning phase wasn't that good, and he hasn't been super.
That's why I can't handle Monty. The problem in that team isn't because obviously people don't know they got rid of all the French players. They just Targamas, the Belgian player, remains. But aside from that, they changed the whole top side of the map, right? This is what people aren't talking about that I find mad. Is in this squad, the worst thing about it isn't Closer just a worse version of Bo in all regards? Like, what upside is there to this player being here? What is this?
He was never the shot caller either.
I know, it's so weird.
If anything,
and he was an early game player anyway, so like he has the macro, is it? Like, fucking hell.
That's what I'm saying. 100 Thieves was always the team where Closer would do well early, and then they couldn't actually, like, the irony of his name was being called Closer when he couldn't close a fucking game. And he was never the guy to get you back from behind. He would just stomp all over the early game, have some good early pathing, some good mechanics, but they need some other voice on this team, and they have not brought that person in. So it's like, I guess Carbine Corp is better slightly. I mean, I think Vladdy's been playing okay.
He's actually good, mate. He actually has potential. Bear in mind, he's in a shit team. He's got potential. I thought some of his games were good.
Yeah, he's also very young. He's only 18. So it was encouraging to see some of his Talia games. I thought his positioning and his mechanics were really on point for that stuff. So, I mean, there is some hope for a player like Vladdy, but it's like, okay, so we're bringing in a brand new 18-year-old player. We still have Targamas who doesn't talk. Bo and Upset were the most active voices on this team. We replaced one of them with a guy who famously doesn't shot call well, and we have Kana who is Korean. Did we solve the shot calling problems, boys? No, we didn't. But they're
stuck at blade status. Some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill. That is fucking this team, mate. That's Carbine Corp for you.
So I guess they're a little bit better, which is maybe enough for Carbine Corp to get excited about them, but I don't know. The roster moves are just not good enough to really, I think, change the math around Worlds contenders. It feels like it's still like G2, BDS, and Fnatic, and maybe SK now, maybe.
Yes. Because obviously the one team that didn't, the one that's the underwhelming one is in the playoffs of last split. Heretics actually looked pretty good. They almost beat Fnatic. Dude, they've actually just regressed now. They're not that good. Because the problem is the Zviru guy was only ever almost playing Azir in those matches. When he plays the other ones, he's not bad on the other one, but he's just not the same player. Like, I hoped he would be better than he was. He's not bad. He's okay. But the problem with that team is, mate, there's no carry on that team. Like unironically, our Best Damn League show will be coming out maybe today. I'm not sure. I don't know who handles that. But one of the things I talk about on that episode is, like, unironically, the best player on Heretics probably actually is Flackhead, by the way. It actually might be. And bear in mind, in theory, as he was on G2, he should probably be your tertiary carry, He should probably be the guy who is himself a European player or something. So if he's your best player, you haven't got a great roster, put it that way. You've got problems. You got problems.
Yeah, valid points for sure. All right. We'll talk a little bit about LPL. But before we do that, we have another sponsor for you guys, because that's how we roll on Summoning Insight these days. We've got Babbel, who has been great to have as well. Really interesting language learning software app on your phone. Very practical from my experience using this app. So it's really, really easy because they actually teach you how to do very practical things in 10-minute courses. So all the lessons are like quick 10 minutes long, but they teach you like things how to talk. So how do they do listening tests, and you talk into your phone, it checks your pronunciation. And then you do like text messaging, fake conversations with people where you use the words very actively. So you're kind of doing everything that a language requires, speaking it, listening to it, actually doing things that feel like a real conversation with other people. So it's designed by a bunch of native speakers in all their various language. They offer like over a dozen different languages. So you can pick one that actually works. It's less, I would say, gamified than other language apps I've used, but I think it's probably a more practical way to learn the language, and probably more serious than some of the other apps also. So it's been very interesting, especially for me to brush up, as I've said, on my French. So that is available to you now. And they actually have a very good deal also. So there's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, you can get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners, at babbel.com/summoning. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/summoning, spelled BABBL.com/summoning. Rules and restrictions may apply. So thank you very much to Babbel. If you guys have been waiting to learn a new language, better than doom scrolling on your phone. Spend 10 minutes a day doing this stuff instead. Enrich your life. So head on over there. Thank you very much. And again, as always, guys, best way to support us is to support our sponsors. And we try and get you guys stuff that we think you will actually like. So if you have been waiting to learn that new language, why not start now? Babbel's great.
By the way, I actually think an underrated aspect of that type of app as well, Monty, is actually getting push notifications to like remember to do the lessons, etc. Because if I had to just do that sort of thing on my own back, I would just easily go like, fucking 3 days and forget to do it. But so that's actually where it's useful to get because as you say, it's such a quick lesson that you just do it when you get the message. Basically, if you just sat around, you got for 10 minutes, you just fucking do it right then. So I actually find it doesn't annoy me. I actually find it good to get the push notification.
Yeah.
I like it. Little reminder.
So let's talk about LPL a little bit. Biggest stories. So basically, Billy and Top Esports have already qualified for, Group A, heading into the next stage. So if you guys don't know,
remember, guys, there's the stupid thing where after the first thing's like for seeding almost, then you get split almost like Dota 2 matchmaking into like the Prisoner's Island of shitters, and you get like the real one, and then like you have to like qualify through the shitter one to get into the playoffs or something, right?
So what happens is you have 4 groups, but because there are 17 teams, one of the teams has 5 groups, right? So you have 3 groups of 4, 1 group of 5, and the top 2 teams of the groups of 4 and the top 3 teams of the group of 5, bear with me, guys, go into the next phase of the tournament in what's called Pool A or Group A. Now, that is what you want to watch in the next phase, because to be all top 9 teams playing against each other should be really fun to watch. So this is why we like the new LPL format. Meanwhile, if you place in the bottom 2 of any group, so those 8 teams go into Group B. And Group B is the monkey knife fight, rumble in the dumpster. And you have to be in the top, 4 teams, I believe, of Group B in order to even make playoffs. And then you play against the bottom teams from Group A, 2 of the bottom teams from Group A, and you play a best of 5, and that qualifies you for the traditional, as we've come to know it, LPL playoff bracket. So this is all to say, you do not want to be in Group B, because Group B means your best case scenario is a play-in best of 5, where if you win it, you go to the bottom of the LPL gauntlet bracket, which sucks. So you need to get into Group A, which is why it's so surprising that... By
the way, you've just explained, without saying the quiet part out loud, why this is potentially a good change, Monty. Because notice what it does is it makes every section of the LPL have like a relevance and incentive and a meaning. Whereas before, we all know, because so many teams made the playoffs, like if you were playing like some shitter team that no one cares about on like week 4, you didn't really care if you were a top team. You know what I mean? You could afford to lose that every now and then 2-1 or just win it 2-1 scoffed. Like, I actually think, and also, as you say, the joke is for elitists like me and you, what we love it is we only have to see the bad teams in this first. We're not going to watch Group B. We'll wait for the playoffs of that. You know what I mean? We're watching Group A.
I mean, you don't have to watch all the games now, which is great too. And they've tried to spice up the games at this stage by putting Fearless Draft in only for this first part. So it won't be in the Group A and Group B as we're going to see in the second phase. These are the placement matches. So they've tried to spice it up, but there have been a lot of just like games not worth your time. But it's nice because there are too many teams in the LPL, so it's nice to be able to ignore some of the bad teams. However, there have been some cool storylines.
What do you think of the Fearless Draft? What do you think of the implementation of it?
Look, it's fine. I mean,
I
don't think it's
up to it. Is it better than you thought?
I didn't really have that strong an opinion of it. I wanted to see it first. I actually just don't think it's changing that much about these games. I mean, maybe it does sometimes where you can't just kind of like one trick your way through. But most of the time, if you're winning, you know, they target ban you anyway. So it's like, I mean, I guess it's okay. Like we, you know, for example, it may have hurt NIP when they really wanted to put Rookie on LeBlanc versus anyone's legend, and then he could only play at that one game. So perhaps it has. I think we've seen, you know, a certain amount of more interesting picks as a result of it. So I think my opinion on Fearless is like, it's fine for developmental leagues where you're trying to increase players' champion pools before they get to pro. And it's fine for this because it makes what could be very boring qualifiers more interesting. But I don't think that we really need it in elite competition. Like, if the question is, do I want Fearless Draft in a best of 5 at MSI Finals? No. I mean, I think these MSI Finals showed that we had a lot of champion diversity and interesting picks and first-time picks already. Like, that's where the Karthus came from. That's where the Blitzcrank came from, you know, from Gen G. So I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it spices up really high-level competition. It's not the difference, at least for me.
The only one area I realised I do like the Fearless Draft is, again, if I'm being an accelerationist, which is I don't mind Fearless Draft in best of 5 if those best of 5s feature Faker and Zika. Now all of a sudden I'm sort of warming up to that Fearless Draft. You know what? Maybe this is the future. Maybe we shouldn't give Faker that Oriana for the 17th time. You know what I mean? Let's see his square, Monty. Let's see exactly how is it in competition, you know? And let's see on that Nidalee in game 4. You know what I mean? Let's just see it. Let's just see it with our eyes.
You know, that's why Riot won't do it, because like it would probably, you know, they can't do anything that might cause the golden goose Faker to retire, so they can't keep milking him for $500 Ari skins, right? So anyway, the results are, as you guys might think, you know, BLG and Top Esports are 4-0. They've already qualified for Group A, but the real spicy stuff is happening because Ninjas in Pajamas, NIP, who got 4th in LPL playoffs, have completely shit the bed, and so have Weibo. So Weibo actually brought in Tarzan, who had been on his little break after LNG and Breathe, and this should have been a good team, but my God, are they bad.
Paper, doesn't it? Yeah.
They are so bad, though. Tarzan is terrible. Zhao, who is surprisingly super bad right now. This roster has just been absolutely miserable and is in very real danger at this point in time of just straight up dropping into Group B, which makes it like basically impossible for them to have any kind of serious run to LPL playoffs, much less make Worlds. And it's all coming down on Friday when they play NIP, which is actually going to be an extremely consequential match. Because both those teams are just like on the cusp of Group A and Group B, because anyone's legend, Tabe has led them to glorious victory. And now they're actually, you know, Shanks was looking good pre-Tabe in spring, but now we've got Shanks really popping off. Like Ale looks very good again. Excellent play, coming out of Kyle.
Either he has just some talismanic effect, or he clearly just is a bit cracked as a coach. Like every team just levels up when he comes in.
Yeah, he's very good. He's obviously very good. So, you know, Tabe was on a bit of a break himself, and then he comes in, joins anyone's legend. The effect is like noticeable. And we have this Group D that should have been NIP and Weibo duking it out at the top of the table. And instead we have anyone's legend and Ultra Prime in front of them. And, you know, some really embarrassing, you know, losses as well. Like, you know, how is IG beating NIP? IG is bad. They are bad. They beat NIP. Like, what is this? And of course, the one game that Weibo pulls it together is versus Anyone's Legend, but it's a double round robin. So we're going to be coming back onto, into all of these matches. And now we're, not only that, but on Friday, Friday we're getting Group D matches, which is going to be the battle for the top of the table between Ultra Prime and Anyone's Legend and the cusp of the Group A B cutoff, which is NIP versus Weibo. So it's become really quite strange, the LPL, and a lot of the expected teams are just not pulling through.
I mean, also, if people don't know, obviously Anyone's Legend and Ultra Prime are like perennial bottom feeders that no one gives a fuck about normally.
Right. And clearly aren't spending, huge amounts of money on their roster.
Meanwhile, almost certainly, like as you say, almost certainly that Weibo roster costs a fucking pretty penny if it ends up going to the shitter group, mate. And as you say, they're actually the finalists from Worlds, for fuck's sake. Like, what's the narrative if they have to go through the mega gauntlet?
They're the finalists from Worlds who tried very hard because remember, we know that, teams like D+ were in the Tarzan lottery and a lot of people were trying to get him. And this is the team he ends up on. And he just looks individually completely awful. Super disappointing because he was really good on LNG throughout all of last year. So,
and it's just the Sophie's choice. Why do I have to have either Rookie or fucking Tarzan shit the bed? Why is this some like they expect to find one of us in the wreckage, brother? Why is it like that fucking Bane thing out of like Dark Knight Rises? Or why does one have to die? The only good thing is this, at least in theory, there might be a reason to watch that shit group now. There's one good team in there for no reason. Good.
Yeah,
team. Good.
But it is,
it'll be for the other players to, at least the bad teams get to play the good team though.
I mean, the other disappointing team is obviously Fun Plus Phoenix, but they were dealing with internal drama because FPX, did spend a lot of time in like, the top 4 of LPL regular season before losing to, unfortunately for them, losing to NIP in the actual playoffs. So we didn't get to see them in the double limb portion of the playoffs, but this is them. The Milky Way story is kind of getting ruined because of all of these allegations of like team manager abuse and like Shallow who trying to quit the team. And so that clearly has fucked them up because they were really quite an innovative meta team and very fun to watch for a while.
Yeah. They were dope. And it's just sad because that Milky Way storyline was so sick. Like, as I kept stressing, it wasn't that he was just mechanics like Bo. Mate, his actual like decision making of like when he would like engage and re-engage fight, and when it was so his poise was fucking crazy good, mate. Like I've never seen a rookie play like that. Like, mate, even Faker was like he was just like a mega player. Like that's what I mean. This guy almost looked like he was like a veteran. That was what was so crazy about that first split. But sadly, that has like regressed now, understandably. Like, by the way, Dom did a video about this, and people don't like. He summarized the drama, what happened. If you want to go and see it, it's on YouTube. You can look it up.
Yeah, so I would go check out Dom's video for sure. And if you want to see what Milky Way was like, if you missed it, on my YouTube channel is a video where I talk about some of the really impressive plays that Milky Way was making. And, he was just like hard winning games for his team, mega carrying, doing super well in skirmishes. He looked really amazing. I mean, he really did have one of the most phenomenal like rookie splits of all time in the history of League of Legends. So it's a bummer that it feels like he's not being like, I don't think he's played individually amazingly, but the circumstances surrounding him have not really enabled him in the same way. Also, I mean, we could argue that it was a meta issue as well. A lot of their success was coming from Life being really good on some of these kind of fringe meta supports like Rumble and Maokai, which really set him up to succeed and the synergy that he had there. So lots of factors, I think, could be taken into consideration, but it will be a bummer if FPX doesn't actually end up in the good group because we would like to see them play a lot more games against some of these top teams. Hopefully once they're past some of the team drama, but it is looking less and less likely that that's going to happen, but still potentially possible. Like they haven't played any of their games in their second round robin. Tomorrow they play EDG again, which is like basically must win for them. So a lot of good games. I mean, that's the result of these formats that actually have impact, guys, as we can say, these are the games that are worth watching because there are real stakes here, not just another fucking round robin of play where it's very difficult to move the needle from one match to the next. Like a lot of these games that are coming up this week have very real implications for LPL and what we're really going to be able to see for the rest of the split, because after they divide into Group A and Group B for the summer season, like they only play in those groups and it's a single round robin. So Group A is going to be banger after banger after banger in the LPL, some really good matches. And the fearless stuff will stop at that point in time as well.
And like we pointed out in the past, it's essentially just a really clever way of making it so all the best matches are right before the playoffs. Whereas the problem the LPL has is the first thing you do when it gets announced every split is you look at the scheduled matches and you're like, oh fuck, there's like 3 weeks here where there's almost no game I care about. There's two, second to last week there's no good game. Like all even worse money. I actually think the worst thing that happens in the LPL is when you have on paper a marquee matchup, but it happens like second to last week and it doesn't matter like who wins the game. It doesn't have the same stakes. Like I actually think this format is way better because essentially like it loads all the shit games at the beginning and then makes it fearless draft to give it a weird novelty. And then as you say, once you get to Group A, it's just really good games. And then it's the playoffs. So I actually think this has the potential, if they keep developing and cooking a bit, like this could be like the best domestic format in the end. I think it looks good.
Well, it does. I mean, they're not going to have the time to do this next year with the 3-split system. But I think if they take some of the underpinnings of this and apply them in a perhaps a more condensed format. Like I like the intellectual direction it's going. It feels like they figured out all the solutions. Like let's play a shorter amount of time. I mean, LEC did this too. Like I don't understand why people are so down on the LEC format. I think it's brilliant that they get rid of 2 teams after just a few weeks of play and then move into like double elimination. I think it's great. I don't really have a problem with the way that LEC is run right now because you're basically just trying to get rid of bottom teams or isolate them in bottom team prison as fast as you can so that you can actually, see the teams that are good play against each other for the majority of the time, which should be the desired result of any esports or sporting event, in my opinion. That's it. So, any final topics you like to discuss before we do viewer questions?
I think we covered everything, haven't we?
Yep. We'll be back with probably more LEC talk this next week, guys. But lots of stuff to discuss. I mean, we talked a lot about LEC last week, but especially with the start of LCS and LCK, definitely more of a focus on that this week. We are going to take a quick break, guys, and when we come back, we'll do viewer questions.
Right, it is the last segment of the show, which is, of course, where we answer viewer questions. Do not be tricked by the word viewer. We don't literally mean either a Twitch viewer now, although you're certainly welcome to waste your life typing. You've wasted hours if we're reading it. Or someone on YouTube. Don't put a question into the comments. No one will read it. No one will answer it. But if you are someone who subscribes to our Discord, the Last Free Nation Discord, then one of the perks you get, as well as the perk of just getting to support the best content creators of all time in League of Legends, is you get to potentially ask a question. There's a channel on Discord, so go and subscribe if you want to be someone who submits one.
That's right. All right. Can I ask you both to ruminate on the choice by Riot or other TOs to have TriCast, one play-by-play, 2-color for finals instead of the typical duo cast that we see otherwise? Do you think the extra caster provides a significant amount of value and therefore it's worth paying the extra day rate? How do TriCast fit into the history of esports casting practices? I mean, good question. I can actually answer this pretty effectively. So TriCasts are, first off, in Korea, all casts are TriCasts. So when you see Korean League of Legends, they have always done TriCasts forever. It was kind of weird for them that we were doing just duo casting. And I think part of that was a cost issue, obviously, for bringing in foreigners to Korea. But even then, by the time that we, started bringing in more casters and we had like Papa Smithy out there, we started doing TriCasts for playoffs and for finals too. I actually really like TriCasting in LCS. I think for kind of the run-of-the-mill day-to-day, especially for worse matches or matches where you want to be kind of more entertaining and you can have banter, like it was nice to just have, two people there because I don't think it's, you need that extra effort. But I do think that especially for international events, it can be very useful to have one person who has done a lot of work in those regions. So if it's like, if you only need one play-by-play in League of Legends in English because that person, you know how to hand off to them. But like, I liked working with my League of Legends colleagues who knew NA better than me or China or Europe, right? And so it's nice to be able to have that kind of back and forth and talk about team strengths and like, it takes the burden off you as a color caster because, you're just never going to know as much about other regions compared to your region, no matter how many VODs you watch, because the act of casting them sears it into your memory. And, you know, everybody else is going to skip kind of garbage matches in that region. But those garbage matches of a good team, like when they play bad teams, might contain some very important details about strategy or picks or something like that, that the other you might just be not aware of if you skip those garbage games, right? And so I think it's actually very valuable to provide a good viewer experience to have TriCast at international tournaments. That's my take.
The thing is, as you say, Korean esports is always like this, even in StarCraft. But as far as I know, it's also a function, because if people don't know, Korean esports actually has a parallel to Western esports in this sense, that back in the day, a commentator or caster, that was just the play-by-play guys. There was no such thing as a color commentator. What you'd have is, in fact, sometimes back in the day in esports, you didn't even have two play-by-play, and you just sort of hand off between the action, you know. So back then, commentators were just like, in fact, here's the other thing that's similar. Just like in Korea, as in the West, a commentator, in the same way as in Korea, that would be the caster Jun guy. It would be like Red Eye in the West in the past. And they were all people who would, their whole skill basically was like, I can professionally talk constantly in a really like high class way about any game. That was the key thing, by the way, any game. So they don't just do StarCraft or League. Like in Korea, they do Kart Rider and all sorts of wacky games.
Yeah,
if they go to China, Red Eye would be doing World Cyber Games, and he'd be doing like Counter-Strike into like Karom 3D pool game, into like some game he's never even seen. Like, I don't know, fucking like shuffleboard 3D or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And the idea was, back then, caster was just a guy who's mega slick at talking. So what you would do back then on the Korean broadcast is the two people with you would nearly always be ex-pros. Like one would have been like a old school pro. One would be like maybe like a guy who'd been in like the middle era. And then what they would do is they didn't, because this guy's so slick at talking, they just have to have the knowledge. It was like a very clearly like delineated division of labor. And in fact, I've even heard from the interviews I've seen back then, it looked like the Korean ones did loads of prep work as well, Monty. Like they had massive convos about what sorts of things we want to talk about, what plot point, almost like their own production meeting within the three-man team. So I also think the reason I'm bringing this up is I think when you have very delineated roles and you already prepare kind of like the beats of the wrestling match, as it were, of what you're going to do, I think you can also pull off three people a lot better than if you do it the way we do in the Western esports, which is you just find out the day before, like, oh, you three people are doing the match. And as you're saying, it might be like one guy's a play-by-play, but then there's like two analysts, but one's from Europe and one's from North America, and you're just hoping on the fly it just works out. Like they just somehow get it all, the dynamics good, the rapport, nobody talks too much, nobody cuts him off, there's not dead air. So the problem is, I think in theory it can be really good, but I also think it can be quite scoffed as well. And my problem is this: as someone who does talk shows, I can tell you the easiest talk show is always one with at least three people in total on the show, because that way one person can sort of chill for a second, can't they? Like if the other two are talking, they can sort of take a moment out, or if they don't have a point, they can think of one, right? It does take the pressure off you, but I will say, just like with talk shows, I do think there is something you cannot recreate with three that you have with two, though. The rapport, if it's just two, and especially like on our show, for example, we don't have dead air because we both have things to talk about or things we can bounce off and go. So I do think also, in my opinion, nothing does beat, though, when you have the best casters and it's a two-man pair and they just do it. They have like history and rapport. I think the problem with the TriCast is it can sometimes be better, but I think it can also sometimes miss. Whereas to me, the two best commentators, I'll always enjoy, like that's why I love Counter-Strike, a classic duo just doing the game and flowing. You know, like if they're really good, they don't need the dead air. They can always be bouncing off each other, you know. So I'm kind of in the middle on that one. Depends what the TriCast is too.
It's true. But that's kind of a history of it, guys. And also it works differently in the Korean language, because in Korean, there's a less defined play-by-play role. So like the caster general is more of a conversation facilitator, because as you guys know, if you've listened to Korean casts, even the color commentators, like they do those like harmonized calls, and like they, you know, they all shout at the same time. So there's less of a defined play-by-play role. I would say that. And it's more like the guy who would be the play-by-play guy between the two analysts is more the guy who is like really just helping them like lubricate the conversation or direct the conversation. So it's a different dynamic as well. It's not like there are hard roles like there are in most English casts. Will you ever do a hot take show in League and maybe an award show like Side Select in Counter-Strike? Possibly. We've talked about doing hot take point made in League.
Yeah, that's a real one. To me, it's an obvious one. Eventually, I probably will do. The key thing for that one is, I've always said this. If you think about how hot take point made works in Counter-Strike, people don't know it's a show where the whole premise is to intentionally generate a bunch of hot takes for that particular week. So that's why the reason it's genius is it allows you to be spicy, but that's also the point of the show, is almost like to invent the craziest take. And then obviously what makes it fun is the other person doesn't know what your take is. We intentionally don't share the takes beforehand, so that even they react live, and then they'll be like, what the fuck? Famously, Cassad always just goes, are you insane? No matter what take you say is the joke, right? So if people don't know, the reason the formula works in Counter-Strike is because of the two people I have is Cassad is an actual industry veteran and coach and a mega like vet, and then Maui is the up-and-coming talent who can sort of say what he wants, a bit like I can, right? The problem we have in League is this. I can get the guy who's the up-and-coming person who can say what they want. I won't tell you who, but I even know who I'd pick for that. The problem is that third spot, like unless that third spot was like someone like Dom, who at the moment doesn't want to do more shows, it's kind of hard to get a third person who can weekly generate really spicy topics in League and then also fucking stand by him. You can't just like walk it back after you've done it. So the problem I have at the moment is I do want to do it in League, but I'm trying to figure out who can be the third person. That's the tricky part. It's the actual, because I need like an industry person too. It can't just only be me and two fans, can it? Or then it won't also have the same appeal. For the hot take to hit, an industry person having a take also is a big deal, gives it more cachet.
And I think also Maui is like a guy who's very fearless about posting his hot takes, and like also has a sense of humor about them, and like is tongue in cheek. And so the dynamic works really well. But I agree, that show is entirely hinging upon the dynamic and people's willingness to be ridiculous. But I do think it's a very good show. And it just gets better over time as you guys get more synergy too. Like
what was
that last episode.
Did he say like another show as well?
An award show like Side Select in Counter-Strike.
Here's the thing. I don't hate that one, but I don't think that one's as obvious, because the reason that award show works is essentially it's just LEC, Monty. So what we do is we just do like our all LEC team or something. I don't know that in Counter-Strike, like to me, that the awards are as interesting. Like who's the ARP? Like those ones aren't as interesting to me. I find in League they're a bit better because it's a League format,
How does Riot benefit from announcing the proposal for the Americas merger? I don't actually know is the answer to that question. Like you would think it would give the teams leverage. So I'm not sure why they think that. But again, it's possible, as I said to you guys earlier, it is possible that it isn't really, how can I put this? We don't know what the structure of the new team participation agreement is, so they may not have to offer buyouts. Like, for all I know, in the new team participation agreement that they signed to get the new revenue share, or I guess the new stipend instead of the rev share, is that there is like a hard buyout price where it's like Riot has the option at any time to buy you out for X amount of money, right? So I don't know. It's an interesting question that I don't know the answer to. I propose a sitcom about esports winter called The Big Bag Theory.
Not bad.
I like it. Have you watched?
Obviously, the joke would be, Monty, it'd start like The Big Bang Theory, all like Western, like 2000s era aesthetics. And then as the seasons went on, gradually the female character would eventually be in a complete burqa at the end. Because she'd have lost all her rights and all cultural status. But all the other characters would get richer as the show went on. And then mysteriously, one journalist who was a recurring character on season 1 would just disappear. He'd go into a building one day and never come out.
There's a guy with a suitcase coming out.
Exactly. There you go.
Have you watched any Indian movies? If you have, do you have?
It's not a real question.
I have not watched Indian movies.
Here's the thing: I've never watched one as in sat down and watched like a real one, like a film. I've seen like clips where it's like the ones that have really funny scenes in, like obviously the best ones, Monty. I think the action scenes where they're doing stuff like the ones where like a guy, as if it was like a motorbike, gets a horse to go sideways and slides under like the wheels of like a 16-wheeler truck. Like I can't lie, that was hella entertaining, but I didn't want to watch a whole movie of it. I've seen some funny clips like that, and obviously all the dancing clips. I've all seen all that
the Bollywood shit. Yeah. Look, I'm down. If you have good Indian movie suggestions, I'd be interested.
By the way, I would actually, unironically, if you've actually got like a serious one, not one with dancing, if there's is there like a really amazing like Indian drama film that we all need to see? If there is, let us know. Because if there actually was a really good one, I would watch it. If it was like some actual real piece of cinema, has to be serious though. Has to be like a real film.
And it's not Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, obviously that one goes out saying
that movie is garbage. It's also not technically an Indian film, but anyway. So
I'll tell you something indulgent since you referenced it. This is one of these areas where I can be quite annoying, believe it or not, Monty, because I have opinions about other people that have nothing to do with me. Why should I even have an opinion? But are you ready? Here's one of my opinions I'm attempting to force on other people, and I'm really annoyed that they won't listen and do what I say. So you know Scrawny and Launders, who now are the top duo in Counter-Strike, right? Because their name is Scrawny and Launders, for a while people were calling them stuff like Scrawn Dog and trying to make a combo. So I said, logically, because of Launders, I said you should just call yourself Scrawn, because Launders' surname is like Mohan something. I said your alias should be Scrawn Dog Mohandillionaire. That's genius. I think that's fine. Even though cheesy, that's fine. That's actually really good, isn't it? Like, but it's funny, they just thought, they did that thing where they were like, good joke, and then went back to the drink. It's like, no, I'm being serious right now. Like, write that down. You wrote that down in that book there. Sadly, they didn't do that. Just went with all they did something like laundry or something stupid like that, which is like, whatever. You know what I mean? Exactly. Get the fuck out of Scronders or something like, I'm out. Get the fuck out.
All right. So architect of Korean esports based Joe Marsh, who asked the messy question last week. So I asked, is that a reference? Apparently he says last week's question was a reference to the famous It's Not the Statistics rant by Ray Hudson, a football commentator and known Messi Glazer. Okay. So it was a reference that I didn't understand. He gave that
Ray
spiel.
Hudson, who the fuck is that?
I don't know.
It's actually a soccer person, apparently. Okay, fair enough.
He gave that spiel while creaming himself after a Messi goal. This week's question. What would be more
you meant Messi the player, right? Okay,
yes.
I understand that. Okay, right, okay. Go on then.
What would be more distasteful? Oh boy, I can't wait for this question. The 30 esports team owners personally flying to Riyadh every summer to let MBS shit on their chest.
Fair play to this guy, because at least I know to never actually take any of these questions. Let me just step back again. Let me just get in position. Tell me again, right? So option one definitely did happen. Go on.
What is more distasteful? The 30 esports team owners personally flying to Riyadh every summer to let MBS shit on their chest and getting rewarded for being his personal sex slave. So two things.
Right, so pause. Obviously, that first one, Monty, sounds really crazy. So I imagine the second one's going to be incredibly light, but the joke is going to be like, it's like Carlos making a tweet. Someone, come hit me. What is it? Come on.
Or participating in the Esports World Cup program and contribute to the 2030 Saudi vision. What's more distasteful?
Same thing, isn't it?
So the basically saying the debasement of the owners or participating in it to contribute to the long-term Saudi vision. Which is more distasteful?
It's surely the owners in theory, right?
Yeah,
as we say, some people participate aren't really doing it in like an active way. And the problem is the owners do have the power. Like they, to some degree, could be the ones that stop this if they wanted.
Yeah. What are the chances of an NFL show happening this year?
It's what's sad about that, Monty.
Maybe.
I actually feel like because there's so few games compared to other sports, it would be doable. The only issue with that one, I feel like, is this. I have to say that's one of those games where I actually don't know exactly what the hook would be, Monty. Because, for example, that's a sport where people can go super nerdy and know all the coverage. Whereas to me, that's not really massive. I like to do it like league. I just evaluate the big stars and the big player performance stuff. So I think it'd just be hard to nail. I think the tone would be a bit tricky on that one, maybe.
Yeah, I think for me to do that, I would need to really dive more into modern NFL tactics, so I could do that kind of analysis. So, like, my reluctance is that I would need some time to do that.
Like, I think this is the hardest sport in the world to understand, Monty. It's got too many moving pieces.
It's crazy.
You know what I mean?
It's it's like human chess, right? It's very complicated. So maybe. I mean, the answer to that question is like, I think if we found the right sports person who's not part of LFN currently to pair with some LFN people, that might be the way it gets done. But I think with all current NFL talent or LFN talent, I don't know if we could.
I'll tell you another reason why it doesn't work as well, Monty. The reason why it doesn't work as well, it's also the reason why currently the basketball show we do like quite sparingly. We do it like once every month or so, right? It's because the other thing is as well, Monty, I watch these sports for pleasure when I'm not fucking working in esports. Like, I don't want to force myself to watch the worst NFL team play a game so I can comment on them about how their special teams play. You know what I mean? Like, I actually take it as a benefit to not watch that game. Like, I'm watching this one to not have what when I'm finished watching fucking anyone's legend against UP 2 years ago, then I watch the fucking marquee Sunday game. I don't watch the shit game that I don't care about.
That is part of the problem too. Is like
it's a problem, isn't it?
You know, Thorin, I do kind of just enjoy being an NFL fan and like
it's awesome.
You know, not knowing the most about the game. And like,
it's the same thing I do with MMA. I don't always watch all the fights. I sometimes skip to the ones that are the really interesting ones and don't watch the first five. If I was doing it as for a show, I'd have to watch them all, wouldn't I? In theory, So maybe in the future it could happen. So put it this way, we're certainly not writing it off. I think one day there'll be a show like that.
Yes, I do think one day there'll be a show. It's just a matter of getting the right people. And
that might even be, I'll give you the angle, guys. That might even be the sort of thing Monty does if he ever decides to stop doing esports. Maybe that's when he does pivot into doing something like that. That would be more plausible, I think.
Yep. I am a big Samsung Gen G fan and was disappointed in the Lehens pickup after Delight's amazing year. Yes, I mean, but I think he went to get the bag from Hanwha.
Sure.
However, this bot lane has leveled up significantly throughout playoffs and MSI, and it seems like Lehens has taught Paze quite a bit. I agree with that. Do you think Paze has the potential to become more than Ghost 2.0? I mean, yes, he certainly has the potential. I just don't.
By the way, let me just say this now, because people keep doing this to you, Monty. Monty explicitly only ever said Ghost in the context of being a tertiary carry within the team and knowing your role and that you're not the star. Like that thing we said earlier where like, if you're Paze, you are not fucking Lionel Messi in this analogy. This isn't your team business. You're just a side player who's good. And when you have your time, you'll shine. So I think it's more that issue, right? Monty, when they say that, they think you mean you're saying he's a not that good ADC who can only do limited thing. No, he's not literally saying he's Ghost. He's saying he's playing the role of Ghost in Damwon. So I think people get lost on that one because I noticed they keep trying to correct you. Like, he's way better than Ghost. Like, it's not about the literal individual level. We're talking about their role within the team, guys. How it functions.
Yeah. So, yes, I mean, but the question is, should he on this roster? You know what I mean?
That's the problem, isn't it? Like we said earlier, surely Kane should have a few more carry games than this,
I mean, if Paze were to go to a different team, then maybe he isn't Ghost 2.0. But like, I just think it's a mistake. And honestly, like when he's been invested with carry champions or like the carry role a lot of the time, he falters in big games. He does.
Oh yes, for sure. Yeah.
So, if he really needs to step up and be that guy, like in the last couple of years, there have been games where he has all the resources and Gen G lose those games. They can't lose those games if he's going to have the resources. So that's kind of my take. But he is very skilled. What do you think of the skits in esports at the moment? Are there any that you thought were particularly good or funny? I always enjoyed the Flashpoint 6 skits. Also, which player/talent is best used in skits? I think some of the ESL stuff has actually been pretty funny at this point in time.
Way better.
And honestly, I think the best person is fucking Moses. I think he just kills it with like the dry comedy a lot of the time. And like, he's such a good straight man. We used him in that same way. So first off, he's down to do anything. And it's just like some of the stuff where, I thought the skit was very funny where he was like talking to Sponge about talking in an accent or like accusing him of doing the fake accent.
The Falcons thing with the mouse where they were parodying the documentary.
It was very funny, I thought.
That was well done. Yeah.
The Dune one was also pretty funny.
That was, by the way, that one even actually is like shot for shot for some of the things in the movie. Like if you ever see, they actually put like mad effort in it.
It was very good.
If people don't know, the guy who actually does that stuff is a guy who's worked for ESL for many, many years. He's quite skilled. He's a guy, I call it Frank something Welsh. He's actually made some frag movies back in the day. He's actually quite a talented person. The thing I would say is I actually think the best one is a very recent one they made, because here's the thing I actually like, Monty. What they've now, before we've even critiqued them, like they sometimes did it where like the initial premise was funny, but then it's like a whole scene from a movie and they just changed the words. Like that is too indulgent. The difference is now they've even gotten players to do shit where like normally, this is why it's like Flashpoint. They're getting the players to actually make fun of themselves, which is what I want to see. Like they did a recent one with Zimu, which is mega, mate. Because since there's this whole thing that a lot of us have said that Zimu's sort of like being a bit fraudulent in some of the big matches is why he actually hasn't won that many majors and big prestige tournaments. Sometimes he just like has like a semi-final where he's not that good and then his team loses, right? They did one where Zimu himself is being like interrogated for being a fraud. And then the joke, Monty, is because on the broadcast, Maniac always permanently defends Zimu. He's like, get down, Mr. President. He's like that sort of guy. They have Maniac come in as his like defense, like, hey, what's going on here? Why are you speaking to my client without my lawyer? Like, and he does a whole thing where he's got like screenshots of matches he did well in. It's like a whole thing about how he's not a fraud. It's pretty well done, actually. And the reason it's hilarious, by the way, is they actually published it a day before Zimu then actually chalked the final the next day in IM, which is even funnier because it's like, fair play that you actually did the video though, dude. Because like not many people wouldn't, like a lot of league people wouldn't make fun of themselves. So I like that aspect. When you can laugh at yourself is when it's funniest, I think,
That's good.
It's pretty good. Look it up.
All right, I'm going to skip some. You guys are asking just some meme-ass questions this week. Let's skip some of these. Will this be the most competitive year in CSGO/CS2 history?
It could be, because put it this way, what makes it super exciting right now is there is no like clear-cut number one. And in fact, I would say for contenders, you could go like 3-4 names deep, and then even like the dark horses, a few of them. So I would say the top 10 is way stronger now. You know, about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, famously when Huxley and G2 started doing well, me and Richard famously said we actually thought the top end of the scene was very weak. I think it's way stronger now. It's way better now, mate. It's actually pretty exciting now, yeah.
What happened to Prolly? So Prolly, the former longtime coach of H2K. Well, he, you know, after he was no longer coaching, he was like he was in that year of LCS broadcast talent where they were doing like 10 different analysts, and he was doing like talent work. I actually always thought he was a very good coach. And I know this, guys, because I literally was in his boot camps at Worlds watching him coach. So I think he was a pretty legit coach. I actually don't know what he's up to now, but honestly, a very nice guy. And I thought I'm sad he's no longer in the League of Legends scene, because I thought he was one of the better coaches that I've seen in this esport. So I don't know what happened to him.
No, agreed.
On the most recent Four Horsemen episode, you talked extensively about current and historical broadcast talent day rates. If you were the ones to set rates, what would be the rough dollar amounts that you would feel premier talent should be paid for proper S-tier events? I mean, I think like 2,000 to 2,500 a day for S-tier events is like pretty fair for top tier talent. It's probably like a reasonable number.
That's pretty high, to be fair. That's pretty good.
Well, for at like an S-tier final.
Sure. I mean, I will just say I was paid less than that to do fucking E-League on TV, so I think that's pretty good rate. That's pretty.
Well,
that's
that was
like
also
right
a long
there.
time ago now, pre-inflation.
Oh, I see what you mean. True. That's true. On some level.
You know, pre-pandemic inflation. So yeah, I mean, that would be probably pretty high end, I would say. Did Riot ever say why they stopped allowing third-party tournaments in League of Legends? No.
I don't think they ever gave a reason.
No, they were just like, here's the LCS guys, and here's the EU, the NA and the EU LCS third-party cert tournaments. And like, even though they still had third-party tournaments, you know, in 2013, 2014, 2015, you know, there were IEM San Jose's, there were IEM Katowices. They just eventually just stopped giving them the license. They didn't want to take breaks in the calendar. And
off the top of my head, I feel like they ran until maybe 2018 or something. So they had a decent amount of years, but they definitely did just quit and then never say why and just conspicuously disappear. It's a shame.
All right. So question, Monty, if you were the Broncos GM, what would you do? Would you sell everyone off, including Pat Surtain? No, I mean, you have to have, look, you can't just say that there's no talent on the Broncos roster. They're obviously doing a rebuild right now. They have a horrendous cap hit because of the Russell Wilson contract. But what's the point of selling Surtain? Like, what are you trading him for? He's like a top 2 corner in the league, and he's on his rookie contract. Like, okay, so you trade him for what? Another first? Like, what the fuck is the point of that? You know what I mean? You already hit on that pick, and he's worth keeping. He's young enough that he's worth keeping around for the long haul. Like, they got rid of everybody, guys. Like, they traded Jerry Jeudy. You know, they kept Cortland Sutton, but he's still on a team-friendly deal. Tim Patrick's on like a prove-it year after having season-ending injuries twice in preseasons the last 2 years. So, like, they're already just like a bunch of nobodies with a nobody quarterback. You know, a rookie potentially quarterback. So I don't really know what there else is to do. Like, they're clearly trying to hit the reset button. And the point is like selling Surtain or selling off players doesn't really help them at this point in time. They got rid of everybody who was worth getting rid of, I think. So for Thorin, I already think Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT QB. I know you both have mentioned you don't think Brady is the GOAT, and I never felt like when I watched Brady, he was the greatest I've ever seen, as I did think that about Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers. Good man. Mahomes just won 2 Super Bowls with receivers who are literally griefing. That is true. And he passes the eye test like a mofo. Do you think Mahomes is the GOAT? Not yet, but he could be. I mean,
to me, what I think's so cool is this, Monty. To me, Mahomes is just Aaron Rodgers' career if he actually had the coach and the fucking players. You know what I mean? Like that's why I will say one thing about you Zoomers that is actually driving me up the wall is this stupid thing you do where you take the premise that is easy to understand. It's not a fucking revolutionary idea that the average base level athlete is better because of training, scouting, opportunities, amount of money in the job, etc. Obviously, the most basic average level player in the NFL, Monty, is better, right? But what they do is they take that and they apply that logic and conflate it that all players in sports are better than they used to be. And so I'll give you an example that I hate of that is when they talk about like fucking Mahomes, they would always show these clips on ESPN of him doing like an insane no-look. And they'd be like, no one can do this. It's like, I've watched a guy do it for fucking 15 years. Like, first of all, by the way, you're a total noob if you say that because even fucking Matthew Stafford used to do those, you dumb fuck. But Aaron Rodgers is probably the best player ever to do that. So to me, bearing in mind every discussion with Brady idiots was like, where's the rings? Where's the well? This guy's got the rings. This guy's got the eye test and the rings, motherfucker. So how about that? So I agree with you. Put it this way, he has probably one of the best chances ever to go down as the best player of all time. He has a really good chance right now. Right. And I agree with that. I think actually the difference is, Monty, the first couple of rings, he did have mega loaded offense. Dude, this last few years, he's basically got Travis Kelce. That's about it. Like, actually, if anything, they're more of a defensive team recently. So I'm actually quite impressed with this last run, especially. Yeah.
They had no business winning the Super Bowl this last year. None.
No, it was ridiculous. Yeah.
So big credit to him. But also, like, people also underestimate how important coaches are in the NFL. And Andy Reid, obviously, just mega in terms of like offensive design. So I think, you know, people are like, well, is Brady? I'm like, what about Belichick, dude? Like, that guy's a defensive god. And what about Andy Reid, who synergizes so well with Mahomes, right? I mean, I think Mahomes is obviously excellent, but I also dock Mahomes because he's playing in this fucking era where he can just run wherever he wants and nobody can hit him, which is bullshit.
Oh, mate, that one I'll never recover from. That second to last ring where he had that one, I think it might even have been almost a touchdown, mate. You know, when he like ran along the edge of the thing like that and no one was tackling him. That was criminal because all I was thinking of was if you were like 2001 Peyton Manning. Well, like Ray Lewis would have snapped your head off if you'd attempted that. But you'd be dead right now. Like you would actually be dead. Like you'd be over.
Yeah, you can't touch Mahomes. So it's like the reffing is obviously a little scuffed now, in my opinion. And they've intentionally done. Look, I don't even blame them. Like obviously, it's very important to keep these star players playing the game, right, for the health of the league.
You know the problem you're going to always have, Monty? You're never going to get past this. It's actually going to ruin the sport. You know the other sport that has this problem is obviously MMA. But in MMA, you just accept, yes, we're smashing each other's heads in. In American football, you simultaneously want to be like, well, health is the most important thing. Well, then you can't have the sport, mate. Like, the sport actually can't work. I'm sorry, you for real, guys, if you want to have this sport, and I think it's a brilliant sport, you have to unfortunately do it like the MMA sport and just accept that when people are 45, they're going to be talking really fucked up and they're going to potentially ruin their life. And that's why, hopefully, you just pay them so much money, it's some sort of Faustian bargain makes it worth it, or you just love it. You're willing to take, because I'm sorry, it will make, if you make it too, like essentially the joke is, are you just going to make it fucking flag football eventually? Like you wouldn't watch that, mate. No one would watch touch football. Like we just wouldn't, would we? Come on.
Yeah, I also love defensive play in the NFL, so it is a bummer to me if you look back at, you know, the play from the late 90s or early 2000s to today, it's very different. Very different.
Dude, here's the problem. If I think about the person and I knew that offensive player, it'd be traumatic to see him get destroyed. But mate, when I don't know him and he's just a player on the field for my amusement, when you see some person do like one of those old school like Sean Taylor hits where they just crack, you even hear like a hit. Oh, that is the best, mate. When they look at, he might be dead. He might just killed him. Like, you mean metaphorically, but like in that moment, it's why you know it is a proxy for war, because you just get off on your boys, just fucking wrecking people like fucking like it's Lord of the Rings or something. It's the shit. I love it.
Does planning not to watch the Esports World Cup as a boycott make me an over-principled moron? Look, you can do whatever you want to do. The boycott's not going to do anything, because here's the truth about this Esports World Cup. It doesn't matter if 0 people watch it. Okay?
Yes.
This is an audition for ESL and Face It to take over key parts of the League of Legends and esports circuits. It doesn't matter if anybody watches it. The only thing that the developers care about is, do they do a good job of running the tournament and with production? Because if so, here's MSI. You know what I mean? It's not going to be avoidable if you want to continue watching League of Legends esports. So if you don't want to watch esports anymore, sure, boycott it. If you want to keep watching esports, it's not going to do a damn thing.
Two things. One, I still have a thing about the football thing. The one last thing I have to say is this. As much as it sucks when someone's like really fucked up because they were in the NFL, every now and then it does break the other way. You get some really hilarious shit like Antonio Brown, like actually where he has that whole music career. It's like, the whole thing is so mad to me. It is, but it is, but in a Kanye way, it's also funny simultaneously, money. It's like, it's tragically comedic, if you know what I mean. Oh, on the Esports World Cup one, here's the problem with that one, is if you want like a serious answer, well, the good news I've got for you is this. Even in esports, mate, there is unlimited entertainment. Like, you don't have to watch that one tournament. In fact, the best thing is you're on the internet, mate. You got unlimited entertainment options. Go watch a classic film or go watch some 4-player film if you don't want to watch the Esports World Cup. It's all good.
Yep. From a strictly Hall of Fame perspective and disregarding any consideration for skin marketing, how does Impact's candidacy for induction compared to other notable figures in the game?
Is the problem, Monty, is this is where I actually think the Hall of Fame also doesn't work in League of Legends, is if the Hall of Fame's only like the highest accomplishments, then Impact's problem is he'd be like on the fringes because you'd only have to count the Korean shit, wouldn't you? You can't count like Team Liquid winning LCS. That couldn't. So I think that Hall in general will always face the problem of it can't really just be pure merits because there's only going to be Koreans and Chinese and like 3 Westerners, isn't it? So I think you're always going to have a problem because the problem is a lot of Impact's career is just his LCS period, obviously, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think very favorably, unfortunately. Like, if there was an NA Hall of Fame, he'd be like one of the first players in. The problem is NA has always sucked. So, not really one of the best players of all time.
Bear in mind, Impact won Worlds, but as potentially the tertiary carry in a one-off, and then he left career after like 2 years or something. You have to realize, guys, at this point, the majority of what would be earning him his spot would also earn double lifter spot, and a lot of you don't want double lifting. You all think it's just LCS, Mickey Mouse. Well, then the problem is Impact wouldn't get in, would he? Like, as we said, he'd have to be really borderline, wouldn't he? So, and I also just think, even though, by the way, I'm actually enough of a nutter, maybe I would do a Hall of Fame that's just like only Koreans, but I feel like nobody in the West's going to give a fuck after a certain point, you know. They'll care about like Faker and Madler, but they're going to stop caring when we're putting in the people they don't like, you know. Like BDD or something. They're just going to lose their mind when we put him in over Bjergsen, aren't they?
Additionally, Monty, I would like to express my gratitude for the detailed explanation of your cooking stream setup. No problem. I spent a lot of time thinking about all the tech for that.
It's all fake, and Susie was just secretly making some stew the whole time, some Korean stew. Okay, kimchi.
I visit your stream for League of Legends analysis, and I depart with valuable insights that are relevant to my professional endeavors. Great. I'm glad I could help, dude. The cooking stream setup was a very tough nut to crack, and we'll be doing more cooking streams because my cooking stream setup is fucking bonkers, guys. Like in terms of the tech. And it took me a while to research and like figure out how to do it. Why does Riot Games copy everything except the most important things like monetization strategy? With CSGO to Valorant, they copied a lot of it except the key longevity element of CSGO's monetization strategy. What he's saying is don't release a bunch of agents, release gun skins that you own. It is fitting that Brandon Beck worked at Bane prior, now seemingly his company.
That is one thing about League I have always thought, though, Monty, that is actually under like a mistake. The idea you can't in any way trade the skins is weird in League. You know what I mean? Like, that is a massive part of what keeps CS interesting. I mean, remember, logically, Monty, if you have the really old skins in CS, they get more valuable over time. Like, those old ones were like the stickers from like 2014 are worth like fucking 50k now or whatever the fuck, you know.
Because they wanted to make a different game than CS with, you know...
Sure.
Characters. They wanted to make a combination of a hero shooter with a tactical shooter, and so they came up with this to be unique in the marketplace. But it's, you know, we're going to be talking about the same problem in Valorant in 5 or 10 years, which is going to be too many fucking agents and nobody knows what's going on because there's a bazillion particle effects and people are flying into space and like God knows what the fuck is happening in that game as it is. But you know, it's not a good strategy in my opinion. And why did they do it?
By the way, shout out to whoever actually really believed in that moment, because a lot of people did, Monty. There was even a few, I won't mention names, there was a couple of people in the esports industry of CS thought this. There really were people thought Valorant would kill Counter-Strike, mate. The thing to me is they're not even vaguely the same game. No, the kind of person who's into CS wouldn't be into what Valorant is. Like, it's just too different. It's why actually I think the joke in the end is Valorant actually, this is why it ended up being
It's
a
the
worthwhile
gateway
game.
drug.
It sort of carved out its own niche, didn't it? Like it has its own niche of people who like maybe played a bit of League or were in Overwatch as well. It isn't Counter-Strike people generally for me, you know.
Well, it's also that it at least has some of the same fundamentals. So I feel like when the Valorant players and audience grows up, they'll just graduate from weeb CS into just normal CS. You know what I mean? Like if you can play Valorant, you could just eventually just move into CS. So this is for Thorin. What are some albums similar to Caesar's Vengeance by the Kane Project? You recommended it in a video on your side channel, and it's great. Caesar's.
I think he's talking about one that was like it's like a hip hop album, maybe. Let me just have a look.
Caesar's Vengeance by the Kane CAEN Project. Apparently, you recommended it.
Oh yeah, that was like some like conscious rap type thing, basically. So yeah, anything within that wheelhouse, so like Jedi Mind Tricks, Army of the Pharaohs, fucking Vinnie Paz, all that sort of stuff. Children of, what's it? The Lost Children of Babylon is an edgy one. Is there anything else? No, that'll do. That'll do for now. There you go.
Do you think that Riot has convinced themselves that the Hall of Legends will be continuous and every player inducted will get a $500 skin? Or do you lean more on the side that they never plan on taking it seriously or giving other players similar treatment? Wouldn't be surprised.
I said this last time, bro. To me, I'll be shocked if they ever even get to 10 names in the Hall of Legends.
They won't. It's going to be Uzi next year, and then it's going to be who knows after that.
So the stupidest thing is, at the end, guys, even though you're all claiming like I'm the party pooper, in 10 years from now, when there's just 4 really expensive skins and 4 people ever in the Hall of Legends, that will invalidate the entire fucking premise. That'd be stupid as fuck, wouldn't it?
And it will be clearly the money grab that it is. And yes, I do think because of the Chinese whales, Uzi will definitely get a $500.
Oh, no. Are you ready? Here's what's worse, Monty. Even people, again, who eventually would be in a Hall of Fame, because of the money angle, they'll just pervert it. So here's the obvious angle for you, right? Someone like Ruler will probably just get in immediately because you need a person active who you can sell the skins for, and they have to play champions that people want to buy the skins for. There's so much fuckery around that because you're selling skins, mate. That just like it does invalidate the premise. You know what I mean?
All right. Fionn recently tweeted about who the greatest European esports player is, and among the tweets, a common mention is the StarCraft player Serral. It's the only player I don't know anything about, and I've seen mentioned, so I'd like to ask, who is Serral? So Serral is over the last, 5 years or so, a StarCraft 2 player from Finland who has been winning a lot of major tournaments, including tournaments against Korean players. So he is considered one of, if not the best StarCraft 2 players in the world. How would you categorize him, Thorin?
I mean, the good news is you can go and watch videos from people like Artosis has a YouTube channel now where he actually has videos where he breaks down like his GOAT debate, basically. The reason why, here's the problem with this topic, is obviously famously in StarCraft 2, the best player in the world could never be a non-Korean because Koreans are just too many people played it and they were too good. And that was true. Even when people like Stefano won Western tournaments against Korea, they were never considered the best player in the world because the difference is, one, I think Stefano only even tried to enter like 1 GSL or something. And secondly, the GSL was like way hard. It was like LCK. It was a way harder tournament to win. And so everyone considered the GSL winners the best. So at the time, people like MVP or later on, pick whoever you want, fucking Heroes, all sorts of people. So the problem is later when StarCraft had gone, say like 7-8 years deep, well, at that point in time, the joke is Korea had already pivoted to League of Legends heavily and Overwatch and all these other games. And so the player base shrunk massively in Korea. Like the joke, if you go and watch GSL now, Monty, you'll be shocked that most of the players you would know from 2012, mate. Like fuckers like Reading and stuff, they're still there, mate. Like they're still playing like forever. So the Koreans sort of just keep playing. But then you had some Westerns come along like Serral, who sort of like, as the scene shrunk a bit, they were able to be the big fish in a small pond. Now, the interesting thing about Serral is this. He doesn't go to Korea and he does not compete in GSL. So he's never actually done the traditional route to be the best, but he did win loads of Western tournaments that had Koreans in them, including, by the way, his GOAT contenders, like the people like fucking Maru and Rogue and these other guys that would be like the best Korean. So what's interesting is you can actually, this is what's sad, Monty. It's actually the most interesting GOAT debate in esports because on the one hand you have, is it good enough to beat all the same players but in an open format where you have the weekend tournament, or do you have to be a StarCraft champion, be like Maru and win GSL a million times? That's a great discussion. Here's why the discussion fucking blows. Are you ready? This will blow your mind. everyone Western wants to just believe it's Cyril because half of it's like a self-insert of like, and he can beat the Koreans, and well, you don't need to go to GSL if you're beating the same guy in the other tournament. It's like, and so unfortunately, what would be a really great convo, like when people like Artosis debate, it's very interesting. Sadly, fans usually ruin it, unfortunately. So I would just say it that way. It's one of the only people in a game where Koreans did go hard who has like a case to be the GOAT. Like some people do think he's the GOAT.
He also has a very good head-to-head record against Maru. Like, isn't he like on some crazy win streak against him currently? But I think the problem with this also is that we're not acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is that when StarCraft 2 became less popular in Korea, the entire like structure of StarCraft collapsed. Like T1 and KT, the KESPA teams were not actually sponsoring teams anymore. So all the players were going independent, or they were sponsored by very small teams. And like this actually dissolved the support structure that was present in Korean teams, which I posit made the Korean players worse. And like the question that I have, Thorin, is would Cyril exist if he were here 10 years ago? You know what I mean?
That's why everyone wishes that we knew. Yeah, of course.
So like for me, it's like, yes, he is a dominant player, but he's in an era of StarCraft where there is less support around the Korean players than there ever has been, but he's also beating players from that era. So it's a very interesting conversation, I think. And like, I'm not enough of a StarCraft 2 expert to know, but I am suspicious of Cyril's result as a result of, you know,
there's also another thing to throw in, which is another aspect that people miss because they don't do more than one factor, is it's not just about winning, Monty. Like one of the reasons why I have always thought, I mean, I'll expand this to a league conversation. This is why the whole time you should have wanted an open circuit, guys, because if you think G2 was cooking in 2019, imagine if they'd played 10 tournaments, Monty. Imagine if every month they were just fucking knocking T1 back and forth. That would have changed completely the whole discussion. Instead, because they didn't win Worlds, they didn't complete that Grand Slam. Imagine if we'd all played 1 million tournaments, because the part people are missing as well is this, Monty. Just like LCK versus a foreign tournament, right? In the Western StarCraft tournament, you find out who you're playing in the final the day after you play the semi-final. You just keep playing day after day. Remember, in Korea, it's like LCK. You have like a week to prep for the final. You know, you have all this extra time. In a game like StarCraft, that could be fucking big. Think of the builds you can work on, the angle. Right. So I also think that's why to me, GSL was always the gold standard personally. But as you can imagine, all the Westerners get really angry when I say that. So it's all good.
How would you make League of Legends 2 and the esports scene? The Valorant model or another one? I mean, the Valorant model doesn't have enough competition for teams. Like, teams end up sitting out like 6-7 months out of the year. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's embarrassing as fuck.
I mean, if I had to do League 2, I would do what I've always said, which is like, pick the orgs you want, turn all the domestic leagues into tier 2 and make the 20-team super league that's actually possible to follow one complete international scene, and then create some bomb-ass like get 16 teams and put them in 4 GSL groups, and like, let's have some fucking good League of Legends, you know what I mean? Let's have promotion relegation between LCS and the Super League and LCK and the Super League. Let's put everybody in Korea so that the Western teams actually have good practice so they can actually get as good as the Korean players and the Chinese players, right? I don't think it's a lack of talent that is holding G2 back. Like, they're clearly talented enough to overcome the garbage practice in their region to be a top 4 team in the world. Imagine how good they could be if they were just practicing like that all the time. We saw Liquid level up quite a bit, I think, in Korea as well. Not that they're the most talented players, but surely we could make a few good Western teams that would be competitive. Like, I'd love to see Jojo Pian in Korea full time. That'd be bomb. So that's what I would do. Like, I'm sick of this. Like, either run an international circuit like Counter-Strike, or I think even better, just have everybody located in Korea play the league out of Korea, and that's it. Make the Super League.
One of the reasons it's so bizarre to me that people keep doing this bullshit. Think about this, Monty. You know, one of the other things that's so gross about all the justifications about the Saudi shit. Notice that never applied to me and you making great points. Like, if we made some point, Monty, well, yeah, I know you might not like the Super League. You might want domestic leagues, but we need higher viewership. So having the best teams in the world play each other will provide the viewership to all that. Suddenly, us needing to make money in the industry doesn't matter there. Everyone just goes, no, I'm in a fantasy utopia and I want all the regions to have, like, so which is it? So the Saudi one, you understand compromise there. Because to me, if the main vehicle right now in League of Legends is eyeballs watching the matches, then what you want is BLG to play Gen G tomorrow and then play T1 after that. Like,
yes,
you don't want like fucking UP versus anyone's legend. Like that match doesn't help you. Like that helps UP and anyone's legend in China. But if you actually want the most viewership, you should want the Super League. It would be guaranteed millions and millions of views.
Yep. And constant international competition, right? And also it would make regional promotional relegation super exciting. Like,
yep, true.
It'd be very interesting. I think it'd be very interesting. And I don't think it undercuts, the existing structure. If you just want to watch LCS, you can still watch LCS. Like, the existence of LEC is not hurting the LFL. You know what I mean? Like,
I've got a spicy angle for you. Here's an angle that might actually sell you on the Super League, guys. If a Super League existed, Monty, this is totally logical. Now, if I actually have to choose, Monty, and this is a choice no one would make now in LCK, here's the difference. Let's say there's a Super League and it's just Gen G and T1, right? Because they're the obvious Korean ones. Well, now, you know what? If I'm deft, mate, maybe I don't play in fucking KT. Maybe I go to Cloud9. I can get in the Super League. That would actually make the imports better as well. Now you actually might have like the Shy play for like fucking Dignitas or something. Like, why not? It'd be a way to be in the highest league. That would actually be cool.
And I've said this a million times, guys, but when we saw all the best players in North America for the Overwatch League, it made the Western players a lot better because the practice was better. Like,
dude, think about this. I'll give you an example. If you'd have told someone before Overwatch League that Surefire, that guy who played for the Gladiators, would ever be comparable to like a Korean DP, they'd have told you no way. Dude, he was really good at one point in time. A bunch of those Western players got really cracked eventually.
I mean, when the Shock started winning titles, they were a mixed roster team of Western and Korean players. Like, there's no reason that can't happen again, guys.
No, I agree.
And the problem is, the reason why NA is bad is because NA players have to play in NA and the practice is shit because the player base is small. You put them in Korea, you will fix this problem. I promise you. I don't think that Jojo Pyun is less skilled than some of the fucking super bad. Like, are you really going to look at me and be like, you know what? Fisher's a better player than Jojo Pyun. It's like, no. Colby is a better player than Jojo Pyun. Like, no. Closer is a better. No, they're not better players, guys. They're not. Jojo Pyun's a better player than them. Yeah. He's just in a bad region, so he can't get better. He can't unlock his potential. And to me, that's the big bummer. Is it's like people are like, well, what, how are we supposed to get hyped around NA? Well, maybe LCS would be more hype if you knew that the players you were watching in LCS had a chance to graduate and actually reach their potential and maybe do something internationally. Like, maybe you'd be interested in LCS promotion to the Super League, or like a player developing in LCS if you knew that the development in LCS was going to put them on Cloud9, who was in the Super League, who could then fight internationally for North America and help realize their potential. To me, that's much more exciting. I don't know.
I'm with you.
So that's what I would do. All right, guys, we skipped a few questions tonight, but got through like 95% of them. So we're at 3.5 hours now. So we're going to call it here. Thank you very much for watching the show. We will be back with more Summoning Insight as usual next week. See you then.